fights with passion, and he inspires.
Are you ready for a war?
All right, welcome back to From 8 Arbitration, and I've got the man himself in studio. Yeah, this man is sitting right here looking at me. He's got brass knuckles on both hands, so he said he wants to come down and do it in person. So I've got Mr. Mike Caref here in studio, and I'll get to him in just a second. He's got to leave in about 3.5 hours, so we're going to do as much as we can. If we have to, we'll finish the rest on Zoom probably, but yeah, he's in studio. So first off, as far as what's coming up, next week, next Sunday, I have 2 members from the union that is in the Army Corps of Engineers. They're coming, and they're going to do an episode with me. They want to talk about their union as well, because believe it or not, y'all started a movement, the city letter carrier has, and it's showing people that you can stand up against your union and you can make change. And so they are attracted by that. And so they're going to come in and talk about how they're going to try to take back over their union. Like I say, it's inevitable that Renfro's gone. He's gone. And so it's just who's going to take his place. And so I'd be surprised if more people didn't come out that have ever wanted to run for president and do that, because this guy has lost it. And so they're kind of in the same boat. So they'll be on next Sunday. All right, so that should be pretty good. I will be back on July 7th, and I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And so we'll just make up something. July 14th, John Poskin will be on. And I've told him, do whatever you want to do. But he's been itching to get back on. And so July 14th, John Poskin will be on. July 22nd, JB will be on. Now, I wanted him to do an informal meeting, but there's something else that's come up, and I asked him to do it. A lot of, on social media, people are talking about putting in for leave without pay and management arbitrarily changing that to AWOL. And that's happening everywhere. I don't know the reasoning for that. Maybe Mike can answer that. But a lot on social media is our postmaster or our district manager has told people that they will no longer grant leave without pay. That's obviously making a local leave policy that's inconsistent with the ELM. And so that's going on everywhere for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway, JB's going to come on July 22nd, and he's going to do an LWOP to AWOL training. And it's very good because he's dealing with that a lot, and he knows a lot of things to request. And so that will be fantastic. July 28th, that will be the last Sunday before the convention. I will be back July 28th, and I'm going to get us all ready for the convention. And that will be entertaining. We should have fun. All right? As far as the convention, From 8 Arbitration, if you go to from8arbitration.com, they have the From 8 Arbitration store. And they have convention shirts, and they're pretty badass. I know Eckler is making those shirts, but they're pretty badass. And so go to from8arbitration.com, go to the store, and you'll see the convention shirts. And I'm going to get one, hopefully for free. I don't know. We'll have to call. We'll have to see. Maybe Mike will buy me one after today. And so, but all those proceeds go to MDA. We don't keep a penny of that. All right. So go to there and get you a shirt. And like I said, they're pretty cool. That Eckler, he does a fantastic job with those shirt designs and stuff. So get you a convention shirt. Tuesday, we should know whether or not TRAP is going to be extended. I hear that there's going to be a big meeting Tuesday. I could be wrong, but I hear there's going to be a big meeting Tuesday, and we will know something if it's going to be continued or not. The only thing that bothers me about that is if the parties have said that they were no longer going to, that they're just going to let the memos run out, is that somebody got scared and came back to the table. I just pray to God it wasn't us. And so I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I'm hearing. I do know that management has planned on doing their 6-day count training in Dallas. I know that because somebody sent me their training schedule. And so I'll probably read that training schedule next week. They're going to meet in Dallas to get ready for the 6-day count. My issue with that is they will be ready September 1 to do 6-day counts. Our union, I promise you, will not be ready. They will have a couple of specialists, but management has training in Dallas, several-day training where they're going to have bigwigs from national coming in or headquarters coming in and doing their training on every aspect of 6-day counts. You will not see that with this union. And that's one of the things that pisses me off the most about my union is they do not educate the members. Like I said, you got a few experts that will come in when they're doing the 6-day count, but management's always way ahead of us as far as training is concerned, and I don't understand that. And maybe Mike can address that as well. I think he got some questions like that, matter of fact, so just be ready for that. But anyway, I'll tell y'all their training schedule that they're going to do in Dallas, all right? Now, as far as these questions, we're using one microphone. I don't have two mics, and so we're almost sitting in each other's laps. And so I'm talking in one side of the mic. He's going to have to talk in the other. But we're going to get through it. If I have to do some things with the sound, then so be it. But and so it might take me a while because I've got to use my phone to get them. I have people sent me questions on my phone. Then I'm going to go to the Facebook page, and that's probably all we'll have time for because I think there's 111 questions just off Facebook alone. I'll have Reddit and Discord later, and if there's any on Titan email, we'll probably do all those on Zoom unless he's going to come back down. But like I said, he's got to catch a plane at 4:50. It is now 1 o'clock. All right, so here we go. We're going to get right into it. I've got about 4 or 5 on my phone that people have sent me, and a couple off my email that I just took screenshots of, and then we're going to get into the ones on From A to Arbitration, the Facebook page, and those are brutal. And so,
those are the good ones.
If he needs a cold rag for his head, I'll get that. But he's going to, whatever y'all asked, he's going to answer, and that's just how it was. You know, Renfro did it. Unfortunately, it turns out most of his he was being untruthful. Mr. Noble did it. Whatever you put down, I'm asking. I'm not going to skip anything. All right, Mr. Caref, here's the first one. You ready?
First one.
All right. What are the first 5 things you plan to do as NALC president, and what is your long-range plan for the NALC?
All right, so let me say off the top, I don't have all the answers. So this, top 5 things you're going to do right away, that's already kind of a tough question, but I'll try to answer it. But I just want to say that at the top, I'm not running for president because I think I know everything or I'm smarter than anyone else. I'm just doing it because I think that I have a leadership style that can lead us forward as a union. And so I'll answer all the questions. I'm not scared of any question. I'm a member of the union too, so my philosophy is let's get this dude. Let's ask the toughest questions we possibly can. And like Corey said, if there needs to be some more, then we'll do some more. That's not a problem. And the election is not till 2026, so we can do this, 10 times up until then. I wanted to thank you, Corey, before we move on. It's been a while since I've been on the podcast, but you really held the line for the members of this union with a lot of things that were going on that the 2 main things being the charges against President Renfro and the stuff with the contract, the never-ending saga of our national agreement, and the way you've held the line and constantly been in leadership's ass, which is good. The members should take their leaders to account. We expect no less. In doing this podcast, nobody outworks you, my brother. You're always here. I saw you did a midweek episode this week. I haven't even listened to it yet, but you put the work in, constantly answering the phone, talking to people, constantly addressing things, email, constantly doing the podcast, and it does require a lot of work, and you're doing that all on your own. So I credit you for that. I credit you for keeping the focus of the membership on making this union as good as it possibly can. One more thing before I get to the question. A little bit of confusion, I think the episode a couple of weeks ago, and that is regarding what my birthday is. My birthday is actually February the 2nd, which makes me an Aquarius, my brother, not a Cancer.
Touche. We'll get to that in a second. I know somebody's asking something about that, so we'll get to that in a second.
All right, so the first question, what are the first 5 things I would do as president? Okay, the top 5 things I think are the first thing is the national contract. And I know we'll get into some of the details, but to me, the national contract we have, it's been a while since we've negotiated and fought for a good contract. And when I say a good contract, starts obviously with the wages, the pay, the benefits, the leave, and then it goes into the working conditions, what's required of us, on the workroom floor. There's a ton of things in the contract that we have let lapse, that we haven't addressed. For example, every time we have a contract, we say something about hostile managers, and we form a committee, or we do some bullshit that doesn't really address the issue. The grievance process. Our grievances are sitting there. Our grievances are not addressed. We're not getting the appropriate remedies. Management is not following the contract. That needs to be addressed. So all of the things in the contract that need to be addressed, that will be the priority number 1. Priority number 1 will be getting us a national agreement that we can feel proud of, that the city letter carrier, that gives us dignity, that gives us a solid middle class life from day 1 or as soon as possible thereafter. Number 2, dealing with the Postal Service. The Postal Service has become, they become unmanageable. And we used to always have a saying, their management, they can manage or they can mismanage. And that's no longer good enough because they're mismanaging us out of our livelihood. They're making some very poor decisions. They're running the company into the ground, either it's purposefully or not purposefully, but they have more managers now than ever, and the level of incompetence is crazy, and the amount of disrespect toward us and the lack of care and concern for our agreement, our contract, is just very disheartening. So how do we deal with management? I think the first thing would be put them on notice. So day 1, I'll be putting management on notice that business as usual is not going to be the way the NALC is going to handle it. So that's number 2. Number 3 would be the way we are organized as a union. I feel that there's a big disconnect between the national union and the workroom floor. And so you have a structure in the union where you have DC, NALC headquarters, you have 15 regional offices, and then you have like 1,800 branches of the union. Within the branches, they have their own structure, and then you have, I think it's 48 or 49 state associations. The union needs to work together. And everyone is a separate entity, so if you're a branch president, you don't work for the NALC. All my branch presidents, they'll say, Mike is our boss, and it's kind of in quotations. It's kind of like a little joke. And that's because that's not the case. The members of that branch are actually the boss. They're the ones that elected you. You represent them. But we're still all members of the NALC, and all the branches are affiliates of the NALC. So we have to figure out a better way to work together. Some of that is just coordination. Some of that is putting the right people in the right position. And some of that is just communication and planning and strategizing and all that. So those would be the top 3. To round out the 5, got to go off the top of my head here, make up some shit. Communication, I think is a big deal. How we're addressing issues. So I really want to, you have the main goal of the contract. The main goal of the union, is to have a national agreement, and then secondarily you enforce the terms of that national agreement. I think we could do a lot better on enforcing the terms of the national agreement, as far as coordinating our activities. What grievances are we filing? How are we filing them? Is this a national grievance, or is this an interpretive issue? Is this something that just requires local enforcement? Someone needs training. So the fifth thing would be the training program that we have and making it uniform so that every member of our union can get the absolute best representation that they deserve, no matter where they're at, no matter what region they're in, what branch they're in, if they're from a small branch, a large branch, what part of the country they're from. None of that should matter. So that would be, was that 5?
4.
If I put training, is that 5?
That's 5.
Okay. All right, let's call it 5 either way. What's the next question?
All right.
That only took like 10 minutes.
That's all right. We only got 110 more to go. NALC leadership has shit the bed concerning support to local branches for the food drive. We raised money for bags, had extra cards so needed none supplied, thankfully, received city proclamations each year for our service, have news articles published to remind our customers, and had a kickoff of barbecue with our local food pantry to support everyone involved in this cause locally. Neighboring branches had to reach out to us to get some of our extra cards, as none were sent to them. Headquarters no longer matches branch monetary donations. No one from headquarters, from what I've seen, comes out and lifts a finger for the cause, yet they sit in their ivory tower and enjoy the karmic benefits. Despite national shitting this bed, our branch pulled together with the community to win first place in our category for the second year in a row, and we are damn proud of our community. My question, or questions, are, as NALC president, what can you do for people like me that put their heart and soul into the food drive with virtually no backing from national? How will you help us achieve our goals and support our communities as much as possible? Would you support reinstating the matching of monetary donations by the branches?
All right, so the last part is I don't know, but we have a convention coming up, and the members of the union can spend the money however they want. If this is something that you feel the union should do, I wouldn't make a commitment to it one way or another, but if the delegates at the convention say that they want the national union to match any funds, then that's what we'll have to do, right? But I think the main thing is, a couple of things. One, if we're going to do something, we need to do it right, and we need to do it first rate. So what we've done over the past few years as far as sponsorship of the National Food Drive is embarrassing. There are a lot of companies that would want to get the good publicity that comes with being a part of the NALC Food Drive, Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. But the fact that we haven't been able to line up those national sponsors, which in the greater scheme of things, we're not asking for a lot of money. So let's take the little cards. The cards have got smaller and smaller. They play a lesser role in people's mailbox. They're not as apparent when people open up their mailbox. And so local branches on their own, we have some tremendously hardworking food drive coordinators, passionate people that want to participate in the food drive, which is, of course, we are good people, good-hearted people. We want to help the people in our communities that we're out there. We see them every day. We know that people are out there suffering. So we want to be a part of that in the community. But also as a union, it's very indicative of our role within that community. The letter carrier is out there at least 6 days a week, serving that community free of charge. There's no tax money that pays our salaries. So we're out there every day. And the fact that we can highlight our role in the community once a year with the largest food drive in America is a great thing. And it is an impactful thing. And it's something our union should get behind. So now you have these cards, which we haven't been able to line up enough sponsorship to make them at least decent sized to improve upon them. Instead, we go the other direction and we're not sending out. So if a branch this year requested, let's say you have 100,000 deliveries, so you request 100,000 cards. They were sending out a portion, which they never told us what the number was, but a lesser percent than 100% of cards. And the reasoning they gave was, they don't have as much impact when you deliver to centralized delivery, cluster boxes, apartments, businesses, P.O. boxes, and stuff like that. So the branches are requesting too many cards. Now, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard, because the food drive card itself, it doesn't cost a lot to print it. What would be a big cost for anyone when they produce cards is the cost of postage, which we get for free. It's got a G10 emblem on it, meaning we're not paying the postage. All we got to line up sponsorship for, because the Postal Service is already a sponsor, all we got to line up sponsorship is for the cost of the cards, which in the overall scheme of things is minimal. So when you're sending out less cards and you're not telling the branches how many you're going to send them, we had so many branches that were waiting on cards that never came. They didn't know, there's no tracking on them. You don't know how many are coming, when they're coming, that kind of thing. You don't know that the National Union is not going to get sponsorship sufficient for you to have plastic bags or paper bags or something that helps build the food drive better. So it was really bad as far as planning, coordination, and then that's not a good use of our money. Hell, we could have taken money out of the Treasury to pay the difference if we came up short on what we needed for the food drive card. So to me, we really fell on our face this year with the food drive. I hope that's not the case moving forward. And I appreciate the brother or sister for their hard work, and everyone out there that did the good deed on that Saturday, second Saturday in May, collecting food and bringing it to the local pantry so the people we serve in our communities could eat.
All right. The current national leadership appears detached from the workroom floor. One precondition of good leadership, of representing carriers effectively, is to know exactly what challenges carriers face every day. Please explain how you maintain a connection to the workroom floor and gather intelligence on workroom floor issues. Explain how you currently do this as a business agent and how you envision doing this as NALC president. Discuss information gathering systems you currently utilize and how those systems might be enhanced with the full resources of National at your disposal. Provide examples that illustrate your attention to these issues and demonstrate your success. Thank you.
Okay, that was a long question, but
if you need me to read any part of it again, I will.
Nah, man, we got to get to it. Right. So the connection to the workroom floor and what I've done as the business agent to keep connected and make sure that the issues of my fellow letter carriers are front and center. That's what I understood the question to be.
Yep.
So as the business agent, first of all, I go carry mail. I go carry mail regularly, well, not regularly, but at least once a year for about a week. And that's just, the reason why I do that is just to maintain that connectivity to what's going on as far as how the mail comes in. You're like, now we got so much more spurs than we had before. There's just differences. Things with the MDD. I just want, when someone calls me and they tell me about something, I want to know what the hell they're talking about. And if you haven't experienced it yourself, sometimes it's harder. So I do that, and that's just me. That's just something I do. But as the business agent, the first thing to me, accessibility. Tons of the regular letters. You don't have to be the branch president. You don't have to be have a gold star next to your name. People call me. They reach out to me. They send me texts. They send me messages through Facebook, whatever. I'm accessible. I go to the branch meetings in my region. I make myself available so that when members want to talk about the issues that they're having, I'm aware of those. We have a meeting once a week with each branch president in Region 3 and the leadership, people that have different leadership positions. And at that time, that's a way, it's like a touch point. It only goes for a half hour. I'm not trying to take up a lot of their time. A lot of our people are still working during the meeting, so they're just kind of listening in. But that gives me a chance to hear from them what are the issues that are going on so that we can make sure we're responding to them. Do you guys need a grievance starter on something? Do you need some communication on something, some information? Whatever it may be, I need to know in real time what's going on out there so I can address them. I have a meeting with the district manager next Thursday. Send me the things that you guys are concerned about, the issues, the things that you want to make sure I bring up. So that's how I handle it as the business agent. There's always room for improvement, but I think we've done pretty decent with that. Now, if I'm the president of the union, I think the first thing that will be important is the functionality of the contract administration unit. I don't like the way it functions now. There's not a single member of the CAU that is not from Washington, D.C. That to me is absurd, especially in the digital era where you can have meetings where a person doesn't have to fly to D.C. they can be on Zoom, or they can be connected with the people that are at that meeting in DC, or you can do it a different way. But my idea was, and I gave President Renfro this idea back in 2022. He hasn't implemented it in any way, but I would have at least one person from the regional office, either the business agent or their designee, on the CAU. And when they have their meetings, now the first part of the meeting or the second part is like, okay, what are the issues out there that we need to address? And then, like I said, you can address those issues either by training, grievance starters, or sometimes you need to file a national grievance. Sometimes there's an interpretive issue. Sometimes we just need to know how to address a particular issue. But without that coordination and that communication and having those people on the CAU so that they're aware of the issues, then it doesn't function. The other thing, the Executive Council of the NALC, to me, should be a fluid body where all of the members of the council are bringing up the issues that we're facing out there so that we can have discussions. The council meetings should be problem-solving discussions on how we want to deal with issues, problems out there, things within the union, so that I would form different subcommittees. And there's a section in the Constitution under the Executive Council that talks about this, but you form subcommittees to figure out how to address a particular issue. So let's say you're having issues with remedies, contract compliance, anything. You could have problems with people not joining the union, organizing. You could have any problem that you have. I would form a committee within the Executive Council to study that, to get more information, to find out what that problem is and some ideas on how we can address it. And then you go to that Executive Council meeting and you say, okay, what did you guys come up with? What are the ideas? What are the thoughts? How can we deal with this? And then out of that Executive Council meeting, you're trying to make a good decision going forward on how you're going to deal with that. But it works together. You have a good process and procedure set up, and you have connection with every letter carrier by making sure that you're the type of person that's accessible and that you're aware of what's going on.
All right. During the 2022 elections, Mike went around the country at different COP and other union functions, drumming up support and saying he was running against Renfro no matter what position Renfro was running for. When we got to the 2022 convention, individuals asked Mike if he was running, and he said he had decided against it. Now for the question. In Jacksonville, at the first CLC meeting, when confronted with the same scenario, Mike actually said he really had no intention of ever running in 2022. So what's different now? How are we to trust that he's going to follow through this time? 2022 he was running against Renfro and didn't. He says he's running now. If we support him now and we get to 2026, how do we know if he's not going to change his mind again?
All right, great question, and I'm glad somebody asked that question. If I had a weekly podcast,
it gets better. It gets better, trust me.
But I know there was in the question, the premise in the question that I was going around in 20. I was considering running for president in 2022. Now I never said I was going to run, and I never made the decision to run. To me, there's a lot of factors in that, and for me, just so you guys know, and I'm in hindsight, you look at it now, you're like, damn, I wish I would have ran, and not because, just because of the state of the union. I feel that we would have been much better off with a different president. If I would have been the president in 2022 instead of Brian Renfro, I think we'd be in a better position now in 2024 and going forward than we're in right now. So I do feel everyone's pain on that one. But here's what happened. It takes a lot to run for, and also it takes a lot if you're going to be the president of the union. I spent some time in President Fred Rolando's office. He used to have these stacks and stacks of papers, and he would have these, he'd call you at like 8 o'clock at night. He'd call you on Saturdays, Sundays. It was never ending, the job of the president of the NALC. So I always took that very seriously, that was going to be one hell of a commitment. both in running and having a campaign, and actually if you win, if you are the president. And in 2022, there was a couple of big problems there. The first problem was I had something going on in my personal life, and my kids mean everything to me, you know? And I had something that I had to deal with that I knew was going to take away from me being able to dedicate 100% of my energies to the members of the union. And that was number one. Number two, and I'll just kind of say it like this, there was not a lot of people in the leadership of the union that wanted to go along with me in running against Renfro, because we all accepted that Fred was a pretty good president. But what came next, there was a lot of misgivings about what was coming next. And I think that there was a lot of people that thought maybe Brian Renfro wasn't the answer as far as what's next. But what there wasn't was a lot of people that wanted to stick their neck out and say, hey, let's run for this thing. Let's do this. I'm going to support you, or you're going to support me, or whatever. So it was kind of like I'm looking around, and like I said, I'm having these issues in my personal life that I know require my attention. And then I'm looking and saying, what kind of support and assistance and help, and who's going to be there, trying to push us in this direction. And it just wasn't there, So I made the decision that I was not going to run. And all the people that I talked to, that I told that I was considering running, I don't think I called each one of them, because there's hundreds of people that you have these conversations with. And no, I didn't go back and call each one of them and tell them that I wasn't running. I mean, I never told them that I was, that kind of thing. So fast forward, and I apologize for that, because I know that people came away with misconceptions that, maybe Mike is just this type of guy that, he talks about doing something, but he's not going to follow through. And if you know anything about me, that's not the case. So now you get into this year, and we had the meeting in Jacksonville. And in the meeting in Jacksonville, I said, at this point, I'm ready, willing, and able to run as for candidate for president, and I'm ready, willing, and able to do the job if I'm elected as president. And when I said that, I meant it. And when I made the decision, when I announced that I was running for president, maybe like a month ago or whenever it was, I'm dead serious about it. I'm dead serious. I'm running. I know it's going to take a lot of work. I like that. I like a challenge. I like hard work. I'm ready to get at it. I think I have something to offer to the members of the union, and this is me making a commitment, a 6-year commitment. I'm making a commitment through the campaign period, and I'm making a commitment through the term, which is 2026 to 2030. I'm not making a commitment after that, but I am making a commitment from now until then.
All right, here's 3 questions. It says it's got 3 questions he'd like to ask you, Mr. Noble. He wants these asked to Mr. Noble and Mr. Henry. And you're first.
Well, I can't answer for nobody else.
What systems will be put in place to protect members from a lack of or bad representation at the local level? That's one.
Yep.
What, if anything, can be done to stall or prevent gatekeeping, cronyism, and nepotism at all levels of the NALC, especially at the local level? 3. What is your plan to deal with local level representatives who refuse to file grievances on discrimination, JSOV, health, and safety, or anything that endangers their relationship with local management?
Okay, the last one is the easiest one, and we've dealt with this in my region, and I've taken the position, if you go back and look at the duties of the National Business Agent, one of the duties is contract enforcement, and I don't play with that. So if a member calls me about a particular issue, and look, a grievance is defined as a dispute. So if a member calls me and tells me they have a grievance, that means they have a grievance. There's no such thing as that's not a grievance. Now, it may not be a contract violation, but it's automatically a grievance if a member of the union thinks there's a grievance. You also have circumstances where maybe nobody's complaining. We have circumstances where people don't want to work overtime, right? And they're giving the work to the rural carriers instead of the city carriers. We're filing a grievance on that. So if there's a contract violation or if a member feels that there's a grievance that needs to be filed, my job is to make sure, my job as the business agent is to make sure that that grievance gets filed and that we see that the facts are developed, and if there's a contract violation, that the contract violation gets remedied. If there's not, then we move on. If the local union steward or the local branch is not willing to do that, I am going to send in a union steward, an outside steward, to make sure that that happens. That's our obligation as a union. So if I'm the president of the union, I'm going to have, you're going to have your business agent. You're going to have 15 business agents. Those business agents are going to act accordingly. And I think we're doing that for the most part now, but there's places where we're not doing that. And where we're not doing that we're going to fix. As far as a bad representation and cronyism, it's tough, because we're a democratic union. And sometimes people will complain about their representative, their steward, their president, whatever. And I'm like, I'm not even a member of your branch, man. You guys elected this person. So, it's not that easy for me to stand in judgment of the decision that the members of the union made. All I can encourage people to do is make sure that the democratic process is working the way it should work, meaning that if every member should be notified of when elections take place, every member has a right to run in those elections, and every member should exercise that right, and there's not going to be any negative inference drawn about anybody running for any position in this union. That would be all I can do to make sure that happens. And then you guys got to elect the right people, You got to be involved with the union and elect the people that you trust.
All right, we're on to Facebook now. Now, this first question, this is the first question asked. There's about 50 of these, so we'll be skipping through a bunch of them. Okay. But this is the most asked question. 50. This is the most asked question. My question is, why did you split from the CLC? I worry that splitting will make it easier for Renfro to remain in office.
Okay, so I posted the letter. I sent the letter via email to the CLC email database. But let me read the thing because it hasn't been read, at least on this podcast. And, some of my brothers and sisters don't read too much. But anyway, you can find the letter on the Caref for Prez website, carefforprez.org. But I'll read it. My brothers and sisters of the CLC, I really try to refrain from commenting back to the group because I know how that goes. We all start slinging our opinions and perspective and we lose sight of why we came together in the first place. So I'll just give you guys all the accounting of what happened, and then if you want to talk about it some more or ask questions, we can do that the next time a meeting is scheduled, or you can just contact me directly. I am definitely still in the group. I certainly haven't withdrawn voluntarily. All right. I was told by Brother Charlie Miller that he and Brother Ricardo Guzman were putting together a group of people who wanted a change in the union's leadership. I was invited to join this group. We didn't even have a name for it at the time. The founding meeting was held in Jacksonville in conjunction with the COP, Committee of Presidents, meeting on March the 2nd. I asked Charlie if I should invite others as well, and he said that'd be great. We wanted the group to grow. When I got to the meeting, it surprised me that half the people in the room were people I had invited. Immediately, Charlie asked us to elect officers. This was something that he and Ricardo were prepared for, but nobody else was. We even elected one person that wasn't there, but that wasn't a big deal to me. I'd worked with Sister Rocky Ocasio, and I liked her and found her to be very professional. I knew and liked all the other officers elected too. I still do. Yet I had no idea why we were electing officers, what their duties would be, their responsibilities, etc. We had no bylaws, no statement of principles, no agenda, no platform. We were just a bunch of people who wanted change within our union. However, we did have one thing, and that was an assurance from the chair that we would be a totally democratic organization and we'd make decisions as a group. After we left the meeting, I started to think of ways to build the group. I invited a bunch more people to join in, as did others. We were building it together. We were all asked to donate $500, and I mailed in my check. I know other people who donated money as well. Nothing was ever presented to explain how the money would be spent, specifically how decisions to spend money would be made. Actually, we had no idea how any decision would be made. It became clear to me that our group needed some direction and structure if we wanted to be successful. I thought the best way for us to move the group forward was to figure out who we wanted as our candidate for president of the NALC. I figured that person would be able to help develop the agenda, set up a workable structure, kick off fundraising, etc. I had stated to the group in Jacksonville that I was ready, willing, and able to serve as our candidate for president, if the group wanted me to. I've been calling for change within our union for some time now, and I also have a significant track record of success. Plus, I know how to win an election. I was told that Brother James Henry, our current vice president, was also interested in being our candidate for president. I know James, and I was definitely open to the idea of him being our candidate for president instead of me. He and I had a couple of lengthy discussions, but we really weren't able to come to a consensus. At this time, I got a call from Brother Guzman, and all of a sudden, James and I found ourselves on a call with all the CLC officers. We were told that they would now tell us who they thought our candidate for president should be. I was taken aback and communicated that making such a decision without contemplation, a little Q&A, anything, was not a good idea. But they persevered and decided they wanted James to be our candidate for president. I said, and this is where the precise words matter, that if it was the group's decision, the group being the CLC, I would support it. I told James the same thing in a text message that same day, and I told others as well, that a decision had been made and that I was going to support that decision. I never said I agreed with the decision, but this definitely wasn't the first time I was willing to go along with a decision I disagreed with. I am and always will be a team player. My team is my union family. However, when Brother Guzman sent out the email message to the group, he framed it as a recommendation and not a decision. At this point, I started to receive calls and messages asking me where this was coming from. And also, I heard from some that disagreed with the decision or the recommendation. I called James and I told him it didn't feel right to me. I called Ricardo and he assured me that this was simply a recommendation and that the body would make the decision. I told him that I would relay that to the people who had contacted me. I tried to get the word out that everyone should come to the next meeting with their questions and we would try to figure out what to do from there. I even sent a proposal to the board. I sent it that Friday morning. We had the meeting via email with an idea on how to conduct an election at the convention in Boston. At the Zoom meeting that evening, the body decided to not select a candidate for president, but instead they asked James and me to submit our platforms to the group for further consideration. I was excited to present my platform. I've been wanting to put some of these ideas on paper for years, and also I'm extremely proud of our group in Region 3. I relish the opportunity to see if the rest of the country wanted to adopt our ways too. James and I had another meeting with the CLC board. We decided to submit our platforms by May 31st to Brother Guzman, and he would send them out to the group that same day. Then James and I got the boot, so the board could come up with how the CLC would decide who their candidate for president would be. Except the board never came up with anything. The other thing that happened was that Brother Henry started calling around for endorsements. Not invitations to join the CLC and participate in the election process, but endorsements for his candidacy before he had provided his platform to the group. I wanted my platform to be widely viewed so anyone who wanted to have their say could join the group and vote. James wanted people to sign on to his candidacy prior to the CLC endorsing him as our candidate. The whole thing started to leave a bad taste in my mouth, and so I decided to run for president with or without the backing of this particular group. So that's what happened, and now I'm running a campaign for president. After seeing this process play out, I'm even more convinced that I'm the right guy for the job. I'm not a politician, not trying to sell anyone on anything. I have a lot of support because of who I am, what I stand for, and my record of accomplishment. I'm not mad at anyone for supporting James Henry for president. If you think he's the answer for us, then you should absolutely push for him to be a candidate for president and get elected. However, every person currently in the CLC doesn't feel that way, and that's okay too. At this point, it's apparent that we are never going to have a vote on who the CLC's candidate for president should be. Ricardo mentioned to me that he would be amenable to refunding me the money I put into the CLC and giving back anyone's money that requests it. I think that's fair. This group hasn't turned out to be what I thought it was going to be, and so I should probably move on. For others, it may be exactly what you're looking for, and you should stay in it and build it. Ricardo, please confirm that anyone can get their funds returned to them. This way we can all have an amicable split and keep our fight against the current union administration going for the next 2 years. We can always reassess where we are before nominations in 2026. We all have many things we agree on, and I look forward to working with you all on some upcoming votes in Boston. And I'll further say that we have a lot in common, all of us, including James Henry, including Ricardo, including Corey here, whatever. And what we have in common is 3 things that should unify us. And those 3 things are: we're members of the same union, we want what's best for the members of the union, and we think that we need change and the status quo can't stand. Other than that, if they fought in the 70s for every, Sombrado and his friends, they fought to change the Constitution so there'd be one man, one vote. Everyone gets a vote in this union. So, no, I don't want President Renfro to get another term, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. But I also don't want to take away people's constitutional right to have a vote on who they think should be the next president of the NALC. It's a huge decision. And the fact that there were people within the CLC movement that were putting as much time and attention into that decision as we do for, like, what am I going to have for lunch? The fact that that decision was taken that lightly really bothered me. It really bothered me. And so I think, why is Corey laughing? You guys can't see him. He's turning red over here. It's something that you look. We have plenty of time to ask our questions, to vet the candidates, to touch them, to feel them. And like Corey said in the beginning, anyone can run for president. We have no idea who the nominees are going to be when we get to the 3rd day of the convention in 2026. We haven't got to the 2024 convention yet. So, I think we'll be good. I don't think that there's going to be a division and a split amongst the people that want change in the union. I think we'll figure out the direction we want to go in between now and then. But at this time, it's just, the CLC, like I said in the letter, just really hasn't been what we need it to be.
All right. Now, I've not sent him these questions. I know that was quick on the draw as far as this letter, but he has a laptop, and so when you're asking questions, he's able to pull up things. So he's very well prepared. So I have not sent him these. I have not sent you these questions.
Right, and I didn't look at the questions. Even on my Facebook, I was like, hey, I'll just take them as they come. So
I just want to make sure everybody understands. I've not sent him these questions, but he has a laptop, so he's able to pull up things so he can better educate y'all. And this is just between me and you, just so that I'm not crazy. And I think you touched on it a little bit. But after the committee, they voted to recommend James Henry. You did say, and I believe you said it in your letter, that you said that you supported that and that you would get behind James Henry initially, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Let me
make sure I'm not crazy here.
Let me read the text that I sent him. And I wouldn't read, just so you know, I'm not going to read someone's text that they send me, but this is the text that I sent. So, I feel like I can put it out there. Where the hell is it?
Because you and I had a phone call that very day.
Yeah, we did.
I messaged you. I told you, hey, I heard about the committee's vote. I love you. I think you're a fucking beast. I think that's probably verbatim what I said, something like that. And then we talked on the phone.
Yeah, this was May 7th, and I sent this text to James. I said, my brother, we have a lot to talk about, but I'm excited. The CLC officers are absolute leaders of our union, for our union, and they are confident in you, which gives me a lot of confidence. I still think that they were quick on the draw there, but they had obviously thought about it already. So that's a decision has been made. I'm going to help you in any way I can. Trust and believe that.
Okay. All right. Next question. What does he feel are the differences between your platform and Mr. Henry's platform, and why does he feel he's the candidate to deliver that change?
So there are obviously some things that are, let's say, in my platform that's not in James' platform. And the other caveat I'll throw out is, and I think maybe James will do the same thing, but my platform is going to change. And not change like, reverse itself, but I'm going to amend it and update it and make it improve upon it as we go along. As I hear from different members of the union, for instance, I don't have a section in there about the assaults that are going on against the letter carriers and how to deal with that. So that's something that I'll write up and I'll include in there. I have some ideas on that. Obviously you have a deadline, you got to submit the thing. So there's other things I want to put in there. And then there's some things that as we get comments and suggestions and different ways of dealing with things, that we'll include that in the platform. It's a flexible document. The main issue I have with James' platform is in that he doesn't explain how he's going to accomplish the things he wants to accomplish. Just by saying this is bad or this is something that we're against. So, for example, the grievance procedure. He talks about in his platform the problems we're having in the grievance procedure. But he's the vice president of the union. Tell us how you've, the programs you put in place, the procedures, the ideas, what's worked, how that can work for the entire union. I think that in my platform, I'm talking about things that we've done, things that have worked, ideas and strategies that we put into play, and then we're able to carry that on to the entire union in a way that we can be successful. I think that my platform is more of a roadmap for success for the union. I think it's more comprehensive. I think James's platform is more, superficial and here's the things we don't like, or here's our goals, here's what we would like to see, kind of thing. But overall, a lot of people have commented on this. I thought his platform was pretty good. I like reading it. I like reading mine, whatever. So I think we're not too far apart there.
All right. Your thoughts on closed-door negotiations. Why are paying members left in the dark about contract negotiations?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer why. It's absurd to me. Dues-paying members of the union, and the most important thing that we do as a union is negotiate a contract. And the fact that we hide those negotiations, I don't understand that. So obviously there's a big resolution that sponsored by Building a Fighting NALC is put out and first started in Branch 9 in Minneapolis about open bargaining. It's got a couple of, three whereases in there that I hope we do adopt at the convention here in Boston, and then that will be the law of the land going forward. So that would help to kind of change the direction and how we do open bargaining. How we do collective bargaining, because it's not open bargaining right now. One resolution I'll tell you guys that we submitted, my branch 11, President Elise Foster, what we submitted was a resolution that under the duties of the president has, sets the standard and runs the collective bargaining process. But under the duties of the president in the Constitution, it says basically that the president will work with and form committees, bargaining committees, with whoever they want. And so we added language in, and this is a proposed amendment to the Constitution, that the president can use whoever they want, but at the least they will utilize the business agents and the members of the executive council or their designees. It's kind of like other unions have like a rank and file committee or things like that. But we have elected officers of the union who have no idea what's going on with the collective bargaining talks with the Postal Service. And that, to me, is the biggest problem that we have right now.
All right. I think you've already answered this one. This is, again, I think this is the most asked question. Why are you willing to split the votes and risk Renfro getting reelected? And I think you answered that. I did like the answer where you said, hey, look, we still got 2 years. We're going to make sure that the vote's not split. Kind of paraphrasing what you said.
Yeah. We're going to make sure we put our best foot forward. The other thing that, there's a lot of talk about a slate of candidates. And let me be clear. There's no such thing. And I don't know, every branch has their own setup when they do elections. But like in my branch, you can actually run as a slate. So when I ran for the vice president and Mac Julian ran for the president and Elise Foster ran for the recording secretary this was in 2009. When we ran, all the member of the union or the branch had to do was check one box that said action slate. And when they checked action slate, that means they voted for all of us, right? And that's how we ran. We were the action slate. They were the administrative slate or something. The worst name ever for a union slate. But anyway, and we won that election, and we didn't require people, in that time, they didn't have to pick a person. Now, when you get into our election, national election in 2026, my opinion is that there's a lot of good people. And I'm not going to dismiss. I'm not going to alienate. I'm not going to talk negatively about any of those people. And some of those people have been in the forefront as voices for change. And some of those people have been hard workers, diligent, good unionists who have not been voices for change. And generally, what we're going to do when we run for different offices, one, any member can run for any position. But when we're making recommendations on the different positions, I think you're going to have to look at all these different factors, and you're going to have to figure out who would be the best people together as a team to run the union. Now, the president is the head coach. So your most important decision by far is who is going to be the president. But if we elect the right president and we have good options for who's going to be the vice president, the secretary treasurer, that's not a bad thing for the union. That's good for us to have the democratic right and to have good, viable options on the different offices of who wants to run for what. But the most important decision is the president. The president has tremendous decision-making power under the Constitution. The president delegates. The president hires. The president assigns. The president is the face of the union when they go out, either to the public, to the media, to the postal service, within the union at the rap sessions and all that. Electing the right president is job number one. And then the next thing would be to make sure, and I will make sure as a candidate for president, that we also have good, viable options for all the other union officers as well. And I'm going to work with everyone to make sure that happens. And make sure we win. That's important too, All
right, here's a tough one. Why aren't we making starting pay the same as prior to 2013 debacle before anything else? Example of a random given year prior to 2013 starting pay. It is either incompetence or ignorance that those near or at the top of the scale need to receive the same increase that whatever step A receives. They never took a pay cut nor missed their COLA's general wage increases.
What was the last part?
They never took a pay cut nor missed their COLA's general wage increases.
Oh, if you were in Table 1. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at the Table 1 chart, the starting pay now would be close to $30 an hour. And we were at... Are you showing me the chart?
That's just what they sent with it. So
I got you.
Figured that would help you answer your question.
Well, that didn't help me. But there, 3006, is that the number?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, 3006. I knew it was around $30. So I guess there's... So President Renfro's been saying that one of our bargaining goals is to have one pay chart. And that's a bit of a misnomer because we already have one pay chart. We just don't have a good pay chart. If you take everyone that's in Table 1, 99+% of them are already at the top step. So if you move the people from the top step in Table 1, which is everybody, and put them at the same top step in Table 2, the exact same amount of money, now you have everybody in Table 2. So effectively, everybody is already in one pay scale. It just is not a good pay scale. And the previous pay scale that we worked under prior to 2013 had two things in it. One, it had a much higher starting pay. It had a much higher starting pay, and it front-loaded the raises where you were getting big raises at the beginning where, let's say, if it took 12 years to get to the top, after 3 years, just as an example, you were 80% of the way to the top, and there was only minimal increases after that. So the amount of money that you would earn as a letter carrier would be significantly more because you're earning significantly more money at the start and at all of the early steps. Now all of the steps are prorated and they're spread out, and there's this huge gap between what a starting letter carrier makes, 1933, the CCA rate, 2213, which is the starting PTF rate, and no holiday pay, by the way, which a lot of people don't even realize that because of the step AA. They took away the holiday pay from us. And then the top is like $37 an hour. So there's a huge difference there. When we get into bargaining, we have to close that gap. We have to get to a higher starting pay, a uniform starting pay, all career workforce, and a high enough pay that will attract good applicants to the job, which is, people used to stand in line to get this job, and now you have to beg them to even put in an application because the job is just not desirable. And the first thing is the starting pay is not reflective of the work like it used to be. It used to solidly be in the middle class as soon as you started working as a letter carrier for the Postal Service, and now we're not.
All right. Why are you still in the CLC email thread? This question is from my wife, a city carrier.
I don't know what that's all about. I'm still in the CLC. I don't know what I need to do to get out of the thing. I asked Ricardo Guzman for confirmation that if somebody wanted their money back, I put in $500. I never quit the thing. So I don't know that I'm not in or I am in. I mean, there's been no meeting scheduled or anything. But yeah, if I get confirmation that anyone that wants to get out can get out and get their money returned to them, as soon as that happens, then that's what'll happen, and I won't be in there anymore.
All right. What do you plan to get done about these horrible managers and supervisors? JSOVs seem to not work, and they just move them. This seems to be one of the biggest issues across the country. It shouldn't take an incident like Memphis for something to get done.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that in the long term, we have to get rid of the supervisor. And I don't mean get rid of there being a supervisor, but the setup, which is that we are a craft. We are a professional letter carrier with a skill set and a set of duties. And we have somebody that monitors us and judges us on how we do that does not have the same standard that we have. The managers and supervisors want to know how fast you did the job, never how well you did the job. There's almost zero supervision of letter carriers in if we're doing our job well. Are we satisfying the customers? Are we making great service out there? Are we no missed deliveries, a finger in the mail, whatever, making sure that the service is top notch. They're literally called customer service supervisors, and they don't spend any of their time worrying about customer service. They spend all of their time harassing, belittling, intimidating, and trying to force us into some preconceived number of how long they think it's going to take us to deliver mail from point A to point B. So to me, the long-term solution is to get them out of that. Now, that's not going to happen overnight, but I think we need to start putting pressure on the Board of Governors, maybe Congress, to explain and show how much of a waste of money it is and how detrimental it is to the work environment to have these people constantly harassing us every day. In the short term, you can develop some contractual protections under Article 14. In the short term, we can do a much better job of organizing ourselves. I think I put in the platform one thing that we've done. We developed a abusive supervisor worksheet that any member, any letter carrier can fill out and submit to their union steward. Of course, the union steward has to follow up, investigate further. One thing about those grievances, traditionally, we've waited until they became, what's that term? I hate that term they use. It rises to the level of a violation of the Joint Statement on Violence and Behavior in the Workplace. Bullshit. There's a zero tolerance of intimidating, threatening, harassing, and there's a fourth one that's not coming to me right now, but there's a zero tolerance for this type of behavior. Any action by any member of management needs to be addressed with a grievance. We need to get a remedy, whatever that remedy is, and maybe they fix it and they don't do it anymore. But that situation needs to be remedied appropriately so that the letter carriers and the people that work there feel safe and comfortable and not under attack, when they come to work. So we can do things in the grievance process. We can do things contractually, but I think long term we really got to get rid of the supervisors, which is a waste of money and makes our life. A lot of people will say, "Hey, I don't mind doing the work. What I don't like is all the bullshit that comes with it."
Yeah, I agree. Talk about it's a zero tolerance policy, basically, like you said. You have to have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 decisions. Well, that's not a zero tolerance policy. It says in it there will be no tolerance of these things, which makes it a zero tolerance policy. So, yeah, I agree. I hate that you have to build a case on behavior. You don't on violence, obviously, but on behavior, hell, you got to go in just like with Memphis, years of decisions. So
the behavior needs to stop.
Yeah, we need to fix that. Is there any chance to reunite the tickets? You already talked about that. What are your thoughts on the TRAP process, and is it something you're open to renewing or not?
Let's go with not. All right, so here's where we're at with a TREAP. When the TREAP process started, and I read the memo, like a lot of people, we immediately, and I credit Corey for highlighting this, there's some things in the memo that absolutely we had no business signing our name to. And the parameters they put in there, because I said, well, where do these numbers even come from? So apparently they've been doing some testing of a joint route process of the DSR program. And during the testing, these were the average amount of time that it took to do a relay, load the vehicle, whatever. They took that, put that in the memorandum and said, this average time, if it's ever more than that time, it's automatically an anomaly. Now that's crazy. The average, average means sometimes it's going to be above, sometimes it's going to be below. And every circumstance is completely different. So right away there was problems with the memorandum. I went to training just as an observer and observed the training. And one of the things I noticed about the program was that they were asking the people that were evaluating the routes to do a evaluation of the historical data, which has always been done in the M39. You get 8 different weeks throughout the year, and you look at the times during those weeks. Except during this program, they were going to actually go minute by minute and try to figure out if they were going to credit the carrier for that time or disallow the carrier the time that they were spending during that 8-week draw during the historical time, which is crazy because the carrier's not going to remember what they were doing during that time. You can't ask them about it. So we have no business whatsoever. The only thing that we should have been looking at during the historical time was whether or not this work was done on that route. If the work was done on the route, we should have credited the time and then just gone from there. But so they started from the beginning spending a tremendous amount of time nitpicking and going over every little thing that the carrier was doing in historical period, not even during the live week where you're actually getting a consultation, which is somewhat recent. The other thing, the problem with the program is that the letter carrier does what they do out there in the street. And I'm not, as a fellow letter carrier and as a union that represents letter carriers, in a position to judge what that letter carrier does in order to get the job done out there. Some people move fast, some people move slow, some people stop at every block and breathe for 15 minutes. I don't know what you do. Whatever you do and your supervisor is good with it, then when we're evaluating these routes, we should be good with it as well. And that was not the case at all times during this process. One of the things, for example, I always bring up is that when you go deliver a parcel, you're supposed to ring the doorbell, wait for the customer to come. If they're there, you hand it to them. If they're not there, can you put it in the mailbox? If you can't put it in the mailbox, you're going to fill out the pink slip or whatever. So you go through that process, right? But most carriers probably don't. And we're not adding time. We're not saying, oh, yeah, you had 200 parcels that day. We're going to add 200 minutes to your street time that day. No, we're only in the T-REAP process, taking away time, never adding time. I shouldn't say that because they do add some time with the break time sometime. But for the most part, we're evaluating the carrier's performance on the street. We have no business doing that. And whatever it takes is what it should take. So we have these problems with the T-REAP process, right? And the overriding question is, why are we in this process in the first place? I never really got a straight answer to that. I know why the Postal Service is in the process. They want to test out the DSR, right? And they want to be able to evaluate the carrier's performance in a way that they had never been able to do before, unless they carry their lazy asses out onto the street to observe what you're doing, right? Now they can observe you without actually having a supervisor go out there and observe you. So I understood right away, and like, Corey talked about it a lot. We understood why they wanted it. Why did we want it? And, now we're like, oh, we got 700 routes out of the thing. Well, I don't know. There's new growth every day. There's an expansion of routes that happens naturally just because there's new deliveries out there in America as the country expands. And also, in a lot of the rural areas, you have Amazon won't deliver the packages there. So we have a tremendous uptick in the number of parcels that we're delivering on these routes. So you have overburdened routes and you have new growth. So we got an extra 700 routes. Wouldn't we have got those anyway? I don't know. I don't know that we needed a joint route process. We already had the 271G process and other ways to get the routes evaluated and routes added to. So I don't know that we should have ever been in this process in the first place. But real early on, I sat down with Brother Bill Jackson, who oversees the process out of my office, and we came up with a list of things that were wrong with the process. And we sent it to NALC headquarters, the people that they have overseeing the process, which for crazy reasons, and I guess we'll talk about it at some point later, the director of city delivery, Chris Jackson, is not over the T-REAP process for the NALC. So we didn't send it to Chris Jackson. We sent it to other people that are overseeing the process for the NALC, which I got a big problem with that. Anyway, so we do that, and this is back in, 2022? And we say, okay, this needs to change. This is not serving our interests. And then you get to the end of 2023, and the memorandum is going to expire. And the NALC, for some reason, I have no idea to this day, and I ask questions like, why are we doing this? We agreed to re-sign the same memo for an additional 5 months and give them a new opt-in period. And the opt-in period is obviously for both sides, but quite frankly, at least in my area, we had opted into the zones we wanted to opt in already. At this point, these are management zones that they're opting in. So this memorandum, which to me was a management extension, goes until May 31st. Now the memorandum expires on May 31st, right? And there's no new memorandum. And President Renfro is starting to, hear from everyone, the members of the union, that, hey, this thing ain't all that popular out there, right? So he says, I'm not going to renew it unless they give us what we want. They're not going to give us what we want. We're not going to renew it. Fine. At that point, what are we doing as a union? We got no guidance and leadership from our national union on what we're doing. Logically, we could have said, okay, the memorandum expired. If there are zones where we want to be in other words, if there's places where we're fixing the deliveries, if there's places where we're adding routes, if there's places we want to be in as a union, the local union wants to be there, the local carriers want those routes to be adjusted, then we'll continue in this process. But if not, we're not going to continue in this process. Why? Because we're not doing management's work for them. And I wish our union would have taken that approach across the board, but they didn't. So now we're in a little bit of a trick bag. And I'll tell you what we're doing in my region and some other places as well. And that is, we're talking to our members that are on the team. The Postal Service is not sending them back to their routes. What does that tell you, right? Postal Service is not sending them back to their routes, but we're going to them. We're saying, hey, brother, hey, sister, look, if you're not doing anything that is productive for the letter carriers that work in that delivery unit, I want you to say, no thanks, I'm going back to my letter carrier assignment. And we have had many that have, and I know we're not the only region that have had people to do that. Now, when we've done that, what has happened is that the NALC has decided with the Postal Service that they're going to send in somebody from another area to still evaluate and adjust those zones where they know that we don't want to be there, but they want to be there. And I'm doing the same thing, even though that person is not in my region, and I have no say over whether that person, that REIT is going to stay in the process or not. But I'm saying the same thing. Brother, sister, you're going to get a phone call from us. Please go back to your route and don't do management's work for them and hurt the letter carriers in that zone. And so I have no need for the TB process. We have the 271G. We can do it anytime. The process wasn't working for us anyway, and we should walk away from that thing and walk away as quickly as we can.
Why isn't the elimination of mandatory overtime included in the contract negotiations? It has been a major issue in previous discussions and is a significant concern for many carriers. Adding new lists could complicate matters further, so focusing on the fundamentals is crucial. Thank you for your efforts.
Amen, brother or sister. This is an issue that I've been harping on for years, and I'll go back to the last round of contract negotiations. So the last round of contract negotiations, we entered into arbitration. We were in the COVID era, and we were doing video conference arbitration hearings. And in those, as a result of the hearings and discussions with the Postal Service, President Rolando was able to secure an automatic conversion from CCA to PTF after 2 years. And that was the big win in the previous contract. We went to ratify that contract at the end of 2020 into the beginning part of 2021. At that time, we already were seeing a huge problem with mandatory overtime. A huge problem because of COVID. COVID exacerbated the problem. We always had the problem of mandatory overtime in the smaller offices where you have two carriers, one of them's not at work, they want the other carrier to pick up the other route or half the route or whatever, and they're not properly staffing the post offices. So we've had that problem for a long time, but it was mainly in the smaller post offices. Around the time of COVID, right before, during, and after, when we started getting rampant mandatory overtime issues. At the time, I asked President Rolando if we give up the cap. So the cap was something that we had, is something we wanted in the contract. We didn't want the Postal Service to hire CCAs at whim, right? We wanted the Postal Service to be capped on the number of CCAs that they hire, because otherwise they would end up with all non-career workforce, right? So we had the caps in place in the contract, and I asked President Rolando, why don't we negotiate an end to the cap? We give the Postal Service an end to the cap because we have a guarantee that our people get converted after 2 years. The Postal Service has to give us something, and what they need to give us is an end to mandatory overtime. And there's a lot of ways we can accomplish getting rid of mandatory overtime in the contract. One is the obvious, is that you have to utilize the auxiliary workforce to the highest extent. Let's take a step back. The mandatory overtime that exists, the conventional wisdom is that it has to be there, because if it wasn't there, the management wouldn't just wouldn't deliver the mail, which may or may not be true, but they would do that anyway. We got a lot of situations where they're not delivering the mail now. It has nothing to do with mandatory overtime. It's just, mismanagement, or they don't want to pay penalty, or for whatever reason, they're not delivering the mail. But think about the logic of this. Management under Article 3 has the exclusive right to hire as many people or as little letter carriers as they want. And when they do that, they either do it good or they could do it bad. In the places where they do it bad and they don't have the proper staffing, or let's say they're going to schedule people for overtime, and instead of scheduling everybody, they only call in 1 or 2 people. So you have these vacant routes. Now, I'm a letter carrier on Route 6. Why is it my responsibility that management didn't staff anyone on Route 7? The logic of that, it's completely illogical to an outside person, to an outside arbitrator or whatever. It just doesn't make any sense. If you're going to give the employer the exclusive right to hire, then they have to have the exclusive obligation as well to make sure that the mail gets delivered in the way that they have to. So you can set up some parameters in there that force the Postal Service to do things prior to mandatory overtime. The first thing is the auxiliary workforce. The second thing is you get you force them to utilize anyone on the ODL or anyone that desires overtime within a certain radius, right? The Postal Service brings in people from other offices. We even have a memorandum on it about loaning people into other offices, 1968. We can codify those rules and force them to solicit letter carriers that want to work in a certain radius prior to mandating someone to work overtime. The other thing that you can do is you can say, if the Postal Service is not able to staff the place properly and they are forced to use mandatory overtime, or they're forcing one of us to work, in that case, then they have to relook at their hiring process. They got to do more hiring. They got to hire us to do the hiring. They got to do something. They got to pay more, right? There has to be a consequence for that built into the contract that requires them to have a setup that makes sense. And for those of you to think that it's impossible to achieve mandatory overtime, the rural carriers already have it. The rural carriers already have it. And if you're a rural carrier and there's overtime on another rural carrier assignment, it ain't your problem. You know, and I think that's something we could achieve. Now I'm going to tell you a couple other things. We had executive council meetings in January of 2023. And I presented a presentation on mandatory overtime on how we could take this to the Postal Service and force them to either negotiate with us on ending mandatory overtime, or we're going to take it to an arbitrator and tell the Postal Service just like that that's what we wanted to do. I made that proposal to the Executive Council, and do you guys know there was not a single person on the Executive Council that backed me up on that? Not a single one. My brothers and sisters, my colleagues, and I know they're kicking themselves now because we see how this collective bargaining process played out. President Renfro doesn't have a good idea of what he's doing in collective bargaining, but he thinks because he's done it before that he knows what he's doing, and that's not the case. And the people on the Executive Council, now they've gotten a little tougher with President Renfro since then, and I applaud them for that. But at the time, I make this presentation to the council, I look around, nobody's hand went up. President Renfro said, does anyone want to second this motion? Not a single person wanted to second the motion. Now, I didn't come on the podcast here and blast them or talk bad about my colleagues, but that's in fact what happened. And I'll tell you one more thing that happened as a result of that. I did the podcast February the 19th, prior to the opening of contract negotiations, and I got a lot of flack for that. And the thing I got the most flack for was the line in there where I said, call your business agent, call your representative on the Executive Council, and let them know how important these issues are to you so that we can put some pressure on our president to negotiate a better contract. Now, instead of them receiving that input from the membership, a lot of my colleagues on the Executive Council did the opposite, and they chastised me for coming on a podcast and criticizing the approach we were taking to collective bargaining. And that's all I'll say on that subject, but do your homework and figure out what I'm talking about here. Oh, one more thing I want to say. I do salute Branch 9 and some of the other branches that when they started doing rallies and things out there with the public, they made it front and center the issue of mandatory overtime. That is an issue that we can get the public on our side about. That is an issue that people can relate to. When you take a job, you shouldn't be a slave to the employer. There should be some parameters. Article 8.1 says that you shall work a regular schedule, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And to say that we want to have a job where if I want to make plans after work, if I want to go pick up my kids, if I want to do anything outside of my regular work schedule that I've earned, that I've gotten to, I didn't start off as a regular, but I got to be a regular. That should mean something and have some value. And for us to make that presentation to the public that this is something we're going to stand on, I think is absolutely the right thing to do. And I applaud those branches and those members that have done that in the last year or so.
So they were mad because you came on the podcast?
Yeah. They were mad because I was calling them out. And I didn't call out anyone by name. And I still won't call out anyone by name. But if you have elected a representative to the Executive Council, they're your business agent, they're the vice president of the union or whatever, ask them what role are they playing in those executive council meetings. If one of the biggest issues for our members is mandatory overtime, are they representing your issue to the other people on the council and to the president who's in charge of contract negotiations? Yes or no?
When is y'all's next executive council meeting?
This week, Wednesday and Thursday.
Will you tell them I said hi? And I look forward to seeing them in Boston.
Well, you got a lot of friends on the council now. You have more friends now than ever, brother.
I bet I do. Tell them I look forward to seeing them in Boston and come talk to me. All right. This has already been asked. A lot of people have asked this same question. I'm not skipping your question, but it's already been asked. And this is another one about splitting the ticket. Anyone after the initial one, I'm just going to skip it. I'm not intentionally skipping your question, but a lot of them about splitting the vote, and that was another one. All right. Here's one I want to give you an opportunity to reply to. It's kind of the same thing, but I want you to reply to this one. The movement to replace our unfit for duty president began as one of unity, together, union. Why during this time of battling the establishment you have chosen to divide the cause? Almost as if the establishment has reached out to you for help. You are technically part of their regime.
Okay, I guess if I'm part of the regime, so is Brother Henry and so is any other people. But I don't consider myself to be part of, Brian Renfro's team. I've made, if you look at my record, it's been very clear on how I feel about President Renfro's leadership or lack thereof. I've never wavered from any of that. I've led the charge on that in a lot of ways. So I wouldn't characterize my involvement as, part of that team. I also wouldn't characterize me as splitting our movement or splitting our team in any way. But I will say this. We have to have our principles. If we don't have our principles, then we can be changed, but we can just change the face and be the same thing all over again. So our principles, what are they? They're democracy. They're fighting for the members. They're, making sure that we're making good decisions. Our principles are putting our best foot forward. In other words, making sure that we have the best people running for the particular positions. So you have all of these principles, and all I'm doing is making sure that we're honoring these principles. And at the end of the day, every member has a vote. I think that as we go through this process, we become more unified, not less unified, because we're trying to figure out together what direction we should go in. And I think that's very positive. And I think when we get to 2026, this union will stand in solidarity in electing a new leadership team led by a new president.
All right. I want you to address this. This is a good question because this is one that you see more and more of, especially with no contract. What are your thoughts on removing Article 18, our no strike clause, from our union contract, and would you ever consider utilizing Article 16 of our NALC Constitution that allows the NALC Negotiating Committee to call for a work stoppage if an offer is rejected by the membership?
Yeah, the answer to the last question first, you would utilize any strategy or tactic or resource that you have in your arsenal and not exclude anything. The renegotiation of Article 18, I don't know if we could get there. And I don't have the Postal Reorganization Act in front of me, but I think it's also in the law that we're not allowed to strike. So I don't know if we win that, but it doesn't mean it has to be in the contract, right? But the president of the union can exercise at the end of Article 16, where it talks about calling for a possible work stoppage, or at least even threatening that there would be a work stoppage. So I wouldn't keep any avenue that we have or any tool that we have to use out of our toolkit.
Now, I may be off here, but didn't President Sombrado say that once that contract ends, we're walking out?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of times where he threatened or did almost lead the carriers out on strike in the early 80s, I want to say.
Yeah.
Your friend, my guy, Manny Peralta, he's an expert on the contract history. We'll have to ask him.
I might have to get him on here.
Hey, Come on, brother Peralta. Hey, the air is nice and warm down here in Nashville. Come on down, baby.
I told you, Manny's the one who taught me how to cuss, right?
Yeah.
This podcast,
Manny words.
This podcast would be boring as hell if it wasn't for Manny.
Well, we'll have to credit him for that, amongst other things.
All right.
Manny taught me how to be an arbitration advocate.
He was.
He's a beast,
in
man.
2012, he was the one who taught me as well. Love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Yeah. He came out and he was supposed to be my TA, but he took over the whole hearing with Barry Simon. But he's a great arbitration advocate, a great mind. He can speed read. He does a lot of things for this union. Very skilled guy.
I love him. In his Q&A session, Mr. Noble stated that he would tackle the rampant non-compliance issues by appealing to the NLRB and filing labor charges. I've spoken to several stewards who've taken that approach and were stonewalled. Will you pursue a policy where management could be issued discipline up to and including removal for contract violations? Grieve and ask for more money. Even obscene amounts of money does not seem to be working at all.
All right, there was a lot of things in that question. So I did hear Mr. Noble talk about going to the NLRB. I'm not against that as a strategy. You know, you kind of throw everything against the wall. I don't know how successful that would be. Considering we have a collective bargaining agreement. Normally the NLRB is hesitant to intervene where a union has negotiated a collective bargaining agreement. Now, when we go into contract talks, why are we allowing the same language to stand that hasn't worked? We really, if you look through Article 15, there is language about an arbitration award being binding, final and binding, but there is nothing prior to the arbitration award. It's assumed, but it doesn't even specifically say that the terms are binding once the Postal Service signs off on them, any resolution at informal, formal A, or Step B. So you'd want to make sure you have that language in there. And then the next thing is two things. One, you have to beat them up, and I think the person that asked the question is in favor of this. So, you beat them up really bad when they don't abide by the terms of the contract. It's absolutely unacceptable. Can you get language that requires the Postal Service to fire the manager that's not abiding by the terms of the contract? I don't think you can get there. As long as there's language that says, management has the right to manage, they have the rights under Article 3 to hire and blah, 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 right? As long as that language is in there, you in a grievance settlement or an arbitrator or whatever are not going to give you language saying if they do this, then they'll be fired. But what you can get is make it costly enough where they have to change their ways. And the problem we've run into, at least in my region, we've made it very, very, very costly for them. We've been very successful. You look at, and there's a bunch of different awards and settlements and different branches, but, the top one is the award that we got from arbitrator John A. Obey, which established an automatic penalty, of $2,500 virtually every single time the Chicago installation, which is, I think, the largest postal installation in the whole country, every time they violate the terms of the contract, they have to pay us $2,500, and their behavior has not changed since then. So we've done our part. We've beat them up in the grievance process and made it as costly as we possibly can. And I guess we got to make it more costly. I remember when I had a meeting with some of the LR people maybe about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I put some numbers in front of them of grievance payouts. And I said, do you know you've paid out $1 million, like Dr. Evil in the last year in grievance payouts? And that number is probably about $20 million now, and they haven't modified their behavior, blinked or changed or anything. So I do agree with Mr. Noble. There has to be another step to it. But before we could go in conjunction with going to the NLRB, but what we can definitely do is, when we get into contract negotiations, require that the Postal Service, as the managers, do something, write language into the contract requiring them to abide by the terms and what the penalty will be if they don't abide by the terms, so we know what the rules of engagement are. The other thing is, we got to start shaming these people. We got to start shaming them to the Board of Governors, to Congress, that we need to have a better working relationship with. But we got to start shaming them. Do you know how much money they have wasted. If we go in front of an arbitrator and we want to ask for a pay raise, that's the first thing we should put on the table. They've wasted $100 million last year on grievance payout. $100 million is probably low. If you figure it's $20 million out of one installation, what is it all over the country? This is the amount of money that they've wasted and they've mismanaged simply by not adhering to the terms of the contract. So I know you're not going to tell us you can't give us a raise. I know you're not going to tell us you're broke, because this is money that you've just thrown away willfully just by not managing the people that are under you in the hierarchy of postal management. So a good question. Good question.
It's funny. You ever heard of Theo Vaughn?
No.
He's a comedian. He has a podcast. He reached like 10 million people. They reached out to me a couple of weeks ago in a Zoom meeting about coming on their podcast. I don't know if I am or not, and they were talking about.
Because you're a funny guy.
I am funny, and I cuss a lot. And so, but they were talking about the Postal Service and all these things, and talking about being in the union, and we got into that very subject. You'd be astonished at the amount of money wasted on non-compliance. And they're like, well, how does that happen? And just like you said, nobody knows.
Yeah.
The public doesn't know. Congress has no idea, I don't think, about the amount of millions of dollars. And we're raising stamp prices. I imagine, like you said, shaming them into compliance. Congress saying, hey, y'all fixing to raise, we don't receive tax money. So y'all are fixing to raise stamp prices again, and y'all are bleeding money through the grievance process, through non-compliance. And so that was what I was telling Theo Vaughn, the people that Zoomed with me, is that the public has no idea about how much money we're bleeding because of the incompetence of management and the non-compliance, just the sheer payouts. You're talking about OBI. That would not stand in any other business in the country.
Right. That they wouldn't do nothing about it. It's insane.
Yeah, if you had somebody working under you that they're saying, well, let's look at what you're doing here. Well, it seems like you're losing $2,500 a day for this company. Are you going to keep that person on? No, You're not. But here they promote the son of a bitches, and it's just, this isn't my show, man. This is for you. Anyway,
on this topic, there's three things off the top of my head, or just three immediate things that we should put on the table when we start contract negotiations. One is the non-compliance, how much money they're paying out in the grievance process. The second one is the amount of money they're paying out now in overtime and penalty overtime. It's at a higher rate than ever. And the third thing is their problems in the hiring process are causing them to waste so much money, retraining, bringing in new people. That amount, all that money, you put all that money together, and you put it on the table, and you say, this is the amount we want in a raise, Well, this is a starter, what we want in a raise, All
right. Would you support amending, rewriting the NALC Constitution to make it more democratic? For example, providing more check to balance the power of the president, increasing the size of the executive council, increasing the number of MBAs, or allowing recall elections?
So the answer is yes, and the answer is you, the member of the union, have that power. When we go to convention every 2 years, any constitutional amendment that you think is appropriate, you should submit it. I've been beating the branches in my region to submit things to the convention up in Boston, and we have a few of them that we submitted. And one thing we did is we made copies of all of the resolutions that any branch in my region, because some of the smaller branches in particular, they're a little bit timid about submitting resolutions because they don't think they're going to pass. So what I said, here's what we're going to do. Take any resolution from any branch in the state of Illinois, Region 3, and we're going to put them all together, and we're going to send them out to every branch. And we did it we had a Illinois State Convention, and we put it in their bags for the delegates. We said, here's all the resolutions. Let's talk about them. Let's discuss them, and let's see if we are in agreement, then we're all going to promote this particular resolution, even though it came from a small branch or whatever. So I really encourage the members. I'm looking forward to Boston. People say it's going to be a shit show. One thing that I think is going to be a definite positive is that I think you're going to see more resolutions and more involvement from the delegates than we've seen in the past, where sometimes it's just like business as usual, ho-hum type of thing. So I think that's a positive. The second thing I will say is, and this is, I'm not trying to pour any water on anyone that has a good idea for a change in the Constitution. I think we should promote those, like I just said. But at the end of the day, you are electing representatives to represent you. And like I said before, no more important is the person that you elect for president. So when you elect people, put them through the rigors. Ask them those questions. Make sure that they're representing your interests. That would go a long way toward us accomplishing the things that the union wants to accomplish as a democratic union, and not have this feeling that the people representing us are making decisions that are not in our best interest.
All right. What can be done to overhaul the grievance process? The current logjam and intentional non-compliance by management has things at a standstill. I understand we all work for the Postal Service. We can't make them open up to more B team members, but there has to be something we can do to clean up the process.
Oh, I disagree with the last statement. We can't make them open up to more B team members. So, and I posted this on the careforprez.org website, but we submitted a letter to President Renfro and EVP Paul Barner. And when I say we, it's about 35 branches, basically every branch. I think there was maybe one or two that didn't sign on to it. But all of the presidents in my region signed on to this letter because we're all having the same issue, which is that the grievances are backlogged. I think the grievances we send to Gateway, there's like 400 something grievances there. Madison, Wisconsin, they're like 300 grievances. So it's taken up to 8 months sometimes just to get a resolution out of Step B. There's language in the DRP memo, which is in our contract last time I checked, right? It's in the JCAM. And the language in the memo says that where the parties agree that there's a need to activate backup teams, the backup teams shall be activated. And I've had this issue in my region. I'm sure it's going on all over the place, where we've met with the Postal Service like we're supposed to do, meet with them, and we say there's a need to activate backups. They agree, because you look at, if you can't hear the grievance within 14 days, then you have to, the requirement is for the parties to activate backups. And the Postal Service has agreed with the premise, but in action, they're refusing to activate the backup. Sometimes they'll call out to that office and they'll say, man, we want to get letter carrier Joe released, except for the postmaster won't let us, right? Here you have a contract that says you're going to activate these people, but they say we can't tell the local postmaster what to do. I mean, you're going to tell them how much to pay the carriers too? I mean, at what point can you legitimately, with a straight face, tell us that you can't, as the employer, make sure that the term, as labor relations, right, the people that enforce the terms of the contract can't do it. So in the letter, we demanded, I don't know if we used the word demanded, we had a little debate about that, about what kind of language we wanted to use. And I don't remember. But basically, we're saying the national union needs to file a grievance to enforce the terms of the DRP memo. And we should do that. And thus far, President Renfro and EVP Barner have refused to do that. I've asked them to form a subcommittee on the issue, a subcommittee of the Executive Council, to explore the issue of the grievance backlog and what we can do about it. They've refused that. They've told us that the problem is getting better. It's not. The problem is getting worse. We're getting more and more impasses than we've ever had. We're getting more and more grievances that are not being addressed properly at the lower levels. We're getting more and more managers and supervisors that just don't care and they're just doing whatever they want and violating the terms of the contract. So the issue is getting worse and worse, and we haven't addressed it all. And by the way, my branch did submit, so you guys will have a chance at the National Convention in Boston. My branch, Branch 11, President Elise Foster, we did submit a resolution to the convention that where the parties agree that a backup team is needed and where there are backup teams available and the Postal Service refuses to activate the backup, the NALC will immediately file a national grievance to enforce the terms of the DRP memo.
I read a couple of weeks ago where Renfro, in his Postal Record.
Yeah.
Had that little snippet about non-compliance. He's sick of hearing managers. First off, he ain't hearing no managers because he don't talk to anybody on the floor. But to me, it's and I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I hate that I'm like that. But when you talk about these backlogs,
he said we have never been better at enforcing our agreement through this process than we are presently.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lie.
I know.
Straight to the people.
I know.
And here's what I think, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong based off, you're a business agent. I'm a city letter carrier. But just like what happened in New Orleans.
I'm a city letter carrier too, man.
Yeah, but you're a business agent. You're more important than I am.
Oh, my God.
So anyway, you got let's take New Orleans as an example.
Branch 124.
You have 5,000 grievances backlogged at the DRT. Wow. You send in this C team, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the team that the Postal Service has made us pay for.
Yeah.
Because steps informal A, and B, they pay for usually in its entirety. Now they got this step C, this impasse review, that we pay for. At least we pay 50% of the cost. It's a scam. But go ahead.
So you have these 5,000. They've bogged down the system. And I think that they do that intentionally. Because you have this C team going, and they get rid of 2,400 grievances. So the NALC will tell the members, we're getting rid of the backlog. It's working now because we're getting rid of this backlog of grievances. We're having resolutions, so the members are being heard. But these 2,400 grievances that were just wholesaled are for pennies on the dollar.
It was more than that. It was there was a week in March where they resolved 3,400 grievances.
Maybe it's 3,400.
And then there was a week in May where they resolved 3,800 grievances. That's 7,200 grievances total.
Well, in New Orleans, I know that they did 2,400.
That was out of the Louisiana district.
Yeah. And so they're doing that for pennies on the dollar. We're getting nothing that the carriers deserve, and that the case file says we rightfully deserve.
Right.
We're getting pennies on the dollar. I think that management is intentionally doing that because they know if all these go forward, they're going to lose millions. And now we're getting chump change based off of this. And then we have a president gloating that, hey, it's working. Yeah. We're getting all these resolutions. Well, you're selling us out. To me, maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, but that's how I feel about what you're doing to us and with these massive. Basically, the C team is just a pre-arb session to me.
Well, basically, the Postal Service always has the opposite agenda that we have. So we're the ones that have a grievance, right? The manager that the Postal Service hired did whatever they did. They fired somebody, they mispaid them, they put them on the wrong route, they treated them poorly. Whatever they did already, right? We filed the grievance. At every step, we moved the grievance. And the reason why there's timelines built into the grievance procedure is because if there weren't timelines, the Postal Service would always sit on the grievance because it's always in their interest to delay the grievance and never address it because it's our grievance, right? So the Postal Service recently, either, like you say, a conspiracy, a strategy, or just because dumb luck, right? They figured out that they don't have to actually deal with these grievances. They can just move them to the next step or, see if the union is going to move it to the next step or whatever. And when they've done that, there's been no response from our union. We should have filed it. Now, we haven't filed a national grievance yet, but we've declared our possible intention to file a grievance over the issue of does a pre-arb settlement set precedent in the installation in the same way that an arbitration award does and a Step B decision does. Now, we should have filed this at least 2 years ago because one of the reasons why the DRT members for management have been impassing so many grievances is because they have the false illusion that if they write it in a Step B decision, it's going to come back to bite them in the ass. But if they write it in a pre-arb settlement, it's not going to affect them going forward, and they know they have no control or don't want to have any control over the local managers. So this is an issue that we should have addressed years ago and nipped that thing in the bud so that we could be more effective in the grievance process. The other thing is we have really no or little oversight over the DRT members and if they're doing their job or not. I just recently, this week, I moved a possible interpretive issue up to Executive Vice President Paul Barner because what they're doing in one of the grievance files is bringing forth all type of new information. When I say new information, they're going out and researching or calling people or doing whatever and gathering new facts that were not presented at Formal A, and then they're presenting them in an impasse at Step B. Well, under the contract, we don't have the right to call that Step B person from management to testify at the arbitration hearing. So now the arbitrator is reading this impasse Step B decision, and the arbitrator is drawing a conclusion on the words that are written on the paper, and we don't have the right, and we didn't have the right at Formal A because they didn't present it. We don't have the right to cross-examine or to, show that it's not accurate what they're presenting. So I initiated what they call, you call it a possible interpretive issue, and that allows the NALC through our executive vice president, who's over the contract enforcement. He can go to the Postal Service and either get them to agree that they need to take that language out, or he can call it an interpretive issue, or he can say an interpretive issue has to be resolved by a national arbitrator or by agreement of the parties, like a Step 4 agreement, or he can say we'll let that go and we'll let a regional arbitrator decide what's right or wrong in each particular instance. I don't think that's the right way to go. We need an answer on that, because if we don't get an answer on these problems we're having in the grievance process, they're going to continue to fester. Management becomes more and more bold. They keep doing the things that they're doing, to our detriment in the grievance process.
All right. What are you willing to do to make transfers to other districts easier? I live 90 minutes away from my station, and the commute is killing me. I use FMLA at least twice a month because of my mother's failing health, and I know these managers will hold that against me. And then somebody came in on the bottom. Yes, nobody discussed this. You shouldn't have to be trapped in the district you started. Right now it's almost impossible to transfer without dropping down to PTF or changing crafts. And yes, I know you can do mutual exchange, but odds of that working in most situations isn't real high, and again, might have to lose some seniority.
Yeah, so transfers is one of the issues that I put. I got a document on the careforpres.org website, talks about all of the contract issues that we need to address, and transfer is one of them. The transfer memo that's in Article 12, I think it was written in the 80s. It's got language in there that's really weird, like certain departments and shit that we don't even use anymore, and we just keep rolling over the same language because of the approach we take to collective bargaining. Basically, if it's not a pay issue, we go to the Postal Service and we say, hey, you guys want to touch this or not? And they say, nah. And we say, okay, can't do nothing about it, which is crazy. I mean, that approach to collective bargaining is insane. And so the transfer rules don't make any sense. So first of all, you talk about mutual transfers. How hard would it be for us to develop at least a form for mutual transfers? At least a spreadsheet, like how you have e-reassign or whatever. Can you go in there? So we have members. And I don't know if all the regions do this, but you can call the regional office and they have a list of spreadsheet that says, here's all the people that have put in for a transfer into these offices all around the country. So people call and they say, well, where am I at on the list? Are they going to take a transfer in this particular city? Am I number 1? Am I number 6? Am I number 50? That kind of thing. But we can also filter it, and we can look to see if there's anyone that wants to transfer into your installation so that we can try to arrange a mutual swap. Now, there is no contract language or anything in any manual that says how to do a mutual swap. So at the very least, we should be able to get that into contract language. It says, okay, here's the form you fill out, here's whatever. The way we do it now, I send a message to both postmasters, and I have the carrier to write up a little thing saying I want to transfer here, and then I send it to both postmasters, and I ask for them to respond. Now, there's no contractual language that has a time limit. So a lot of times the postmasters sit on it. I got people want to transfer into the city of Chicago, and it's been months. It's been since, I know when it is, it's been since last year, and they still haven't got a response. And now we got to file a grievance that they don't respond to the transfer request. And there's no timeline in Article 12, so now you're filing a grievance saying it's not reasonable the amount of time that it's taken, but there really is no contractual requirement. Shh, don't tell management that, because the language sucks, right? And then the rules, the lock-in period. The lock-in period is stupid. It was designed so that when they did local hiring, if they hired someone, that person couldn't immediately transfer. But now they're hiring people as CCAs. Your CCA time doesn't even count toward the lock-in period. So that's stupid that language was not modified with the CCA time. And quite frankly, why do you need a lock-in period anyway? Why does there need to be a requirement for a lock-in period? You work for the Postal Service. I think transfers should be just like bidding on a route. You bid on a route, nobody looks at anything. They don't look at your work performance. They don't look at none of that stuff. Your work, your safety, your attendance record. They just look at, are you the next one in line? For bidding on a route, it's seniority. For transfers, are you next in line kind of thing. That's the way I think the contractual language should read. But either way, whatever we get would be an improvement over what we have now. The transfer rules are ridiculous the way they're written right now.
All right, Mr. Caref, you have done so much for Illinois, and I thank you. Will you continue will you continue your training efforts for stewards for the entirety of the NALC as you have for Region 3?
Yeah, and one size doesn't fit all, and I'm not saying, and I've never said, we do it here, therefore this is the best way to do it. Every region is different. Our region is a little bit different in the fact that it's only one state. It's pretty compact. I'd say about 75% of the carriers are in the Chicago metropolitan area or not too far away. And we have other areas as well. But anyway, each region is different. But what I will do, obviously, is work with that elected national business agent to make sure that we're providing the best possible training. And also, out of NALC headquarters, you can put out a lot of trainings and things that we're really kind of not doing right now. But thank you for the compliment. I work hard on the training. I believe it's very important.
To me, it's number one. Are you open to joining James Henry on the CLC ticket as an executive vice president? And if so, what will it take for this to happen?
Not at the time, but I wouldn't rule anything out going forward. But not at the time because I don't think he should be our candidate for president.
I'm concerned about having multiple parties splitting votes. My question would be the same for him as for James Henry. How do you go about avoiding a split vote, handing the win to an incumbent with a concerning track record already? I think you kind of answered that one.
Yeah. Well, by the way, let's throw this out there. We don't know what's going to happen at the convention. Chris Jackson, I'm pretty sure it's public knowledge, but he's appealed the decision of the executive council to find President Renfro not guilty. And, I think we can, there's time to go into more detail and make sure that all of the delegates to the convention understand all the things that happened and why they're significant. But I'll just say these two things because we're going to get a chance to vote. The convention is the supreme body of the NALC. And if we feel he's guilty of the charges, then we can overturn the decision of the executive council. And then if we feel he's guilty, we can impose the proper punishment or the proper recourse that we think is appropriate in that case. And I'll just say this. The two most significant charges I think he's guilty of. And I voted guilty on all four of them. But the two ones that are most significant, the first one is on abandonment during contract negotiations. And there's a couple of things that are fallacies that came out of the report of the panel and some things that are being talked about. So when President Renfro walked away from the contract talks in the early part of 2023, he just simply walked away. In other words, he didn't pass on any information. Here's the meetings we've had. Here's the discussions we've had. Here's where we're at right now. He simply just walked away. And to me, just because the executive vice president picked up the ball from there and did some things to kind of carry us forward doesn't make it okay that the president left us in the lurch like that. Now, he obviously has and had a medical condition that, motivated him to need to get treatment and need to walk away. And the analogy is that, well, what if he had cancer? Would we hold that against him? And it's really not a fair analogy because if he had cancer, he would be aware that he had cancer. He would tell us he had cancer, and he would put things in place so that we would not lose out. We, the members of the union, wouldn't lose out when and if he had to go get treatment for the cancer. What he did was lie about his condition, and then when it got unbearable, he went and got medical treatment for his condition and left us in the lurch. Now, to me, that's unacceptable. that's unacceptable that the president of the union did that, and that the president of the union has been saying the whole time that that didn't cost us in any way, that didn't harm us in any way. And I think that's total bullshit. I think it did harm us. And I think that if you're the president of the union, you're allowed to make mistakes. But when you make those mistakes and you hurt the members of the union, you should stand up and say, I made that mistake. I'll give you an example. There were people that, when President Renfro returned back to work, there were people that wanted to try to put it to a vote that we would keep the contract team in place, which was Paul Barner. He brought in ex-President Rolando. Was it President Emeritus? I don't know. How we calling you, Fred? You bring in the people, that were already in place, right? And that President Renfro agreed to allow them to continue. Well, the problem with that is you cannot, under the Constitution, take away the duties of the president, right? The only way you can do that is by bringing forth charges. So President Renfro, because he wasn't being honest and willing to admit that he left us in the lurch and didn't leave us in good hands, because of his actions, he forced us to have to bring charges against him in order to address the issue. And the whole time he's been in denial, and he's been claiming that he didn't harm us in any way by the actions he took. I don't think that's true. And I think we should have an expectation that our president, at the very least, do no harm to the members of the union. And if you make a mistake and you do something, you should atone for it. You should come back. You should apologize. And where necessary, get out of the way of the people that don't have that medical condition, that did continue with the work of the union. So I think he's guilty of abandoning us on that one. The second one that I think is very important is the slander that he was doing against Vice President James Henry. And I think that it's absolutely abhorrent what he did, because that was a situation where you have to be able to work with the officers of the union, and the officers of the union have to be able to do their work. So when you're whispering and gossiping and slandering about one of your officers without at least sitting down and talking with them, I mean, the man was going through alcoholic episodes and stuff in the early part of 2023. But then when he came back to work in June of 2023, he made no effort whatsoever to make amends with, sit down and talk with Brother James Henry. That to me is just not, it's just not acceptable that the president of the union would have this type of interaction and treat a fellow officer, vice president of the union, in that way. And to me, that's another thing that I can't accept, and I don't think it's okay that our president acted in that manner.
What do you think is the right solution for current DRT backlogs? You kind of answered that one. Can DRT be fixed, or should it be replaced?
Yeah, I heard Mr. Noble say that we should just get rid of the DRT and go back to an adversarial step 3 like we used to have. I don't agree with that. I think that when we had that process, we had a lot of grievances sitting for a lot of years. So the step B process was an improvement. One, like I said before, we made the post office pay for it, which it was ingenious, Make them pay for the grievance process instead of making us pay for it. I think that the first thing we need to do is strengthen the language and enforce the terms that are currently in place. And if that doesn't work, then you go to step 2 and 3. But I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater and just get rid of it. I don't agree with that.
What are you going to do to change things when you get into office? Specifically, undo the hour office time BS and 22-minute load time from those memos that Renfro signed. What will you do about carriers constantly getting harassed about inactivity events and DOAS PEP projections? Is it just a minor inconvenience?
Yeah, it's a living hell for a lot of our members is what it is, right? So, I don't have all the answers. We're going to work together. We got a lot of smart people out there filing a lot of good grievances. What we can do is pool our resources, get that information out. Obviously, stop signing dumb memos that put parameters in street time that don't exist, right? But we can do a better job of making sure that all of the information on how to address these issues is available to our union stewards and the people that are, in the branches that have to enforce the terms of the contract. We can do a better job of going to management and declaring interpretive issues where they exist so that we can get a resolution on those things. Instead of having to file a bunch of different grievances, sometimes you can just file one grievance and get it resolved so that each person in each branch and each steward doesn't have to keep addressing the same thing over and over and over again. I did a class, and for the first time, you guys got to go check it out. So if you go to the NALC Region 3 YouTube page, we posted we had training at the state convention last week or the week before. I think it was last week. Anyway, one of the guys said, "Hey, I'm not able to come. Can you guys film it?" So it was a workshop on workroom floor issues. A lot of the things you just brought up were included in the workshop, and so we filmed it. We filmed the workshop, which is not the same as being there, but go check it out. I think there was some good ideas and some things that came up in that workshop and that training that were beneficial to the people that are going to be addressing these issues on the workroom floor and through grievances.
All right. When did you say he was born? Did you say he was Aquarius?
Aquarius, yeah. We're going to get to that.
At roughly
February 2nd, 1975.
Well, I'm July 19th. I'm a Cancer.
Oh, shit.
At roughly
You're talking about yourself.
At roughly 1820 in episode 157, Corey Walton, speaking on behalf of what the CLC had to do, said the following: "The CLC had to cut out that cancer, and that's what they did. Do you believe that you are a cancer to the CLC in any capacity?"
No. That was it.
That's it. No. Okay. All right. These are two people talking here. This is not a question. Okay. What is your honest opinion of your potential three challengers, Mr. Renfro, Mr. Henry, and Mr. Noble? And I do believe that Mr. Noble kind of hinted that he would not run in 2026, only if the.
Well, let me start with Noble, and the reason why I start with Noble is because there's a certain mindset out there that when looking at who our next president is going to be or should be, it's like anyone but Renfro. And if you subscribe to the anyone but Renfro theory, then you believe that we should have voted for Mr. David Noble in 2022. I don't subscribe to that theory. I didn't vote for him. And if the election were held, he thinks he's going to win the appeal with the Department of Labor, and that they're going to order a new election. If they do order a new election, I'm going to vote for President Renfro again. I'll tell you that right now. The reason why, to me, Mr. Noble is a non-starter is because he hasn't held any position with his branch or the union in like 30 years. And to me, if you can't even step up and be the sergeant at arms of your branch, don't come to us and tell us you should be our president. That to me is not going to work. And the second thing, he keeps suing us. He sues his own union, man. That's my dues money that, we got to pay Cohen, Weiss, and Simon, our attorneys, to defend us against you. And it's like, I'm not. Anyway, he's a no for me. Brother Brian Renfro, I think the brother should resign. I think that, when it comes up at the National Convention, we should ask for him to be removed. I think that he should not run again in 2026. And we'll see. I don't know that he'll be a candidate or he won't. You know what I mean? I wouldn't assume that he would be a candidate in 2026. If he is a candidate, I would not be voting for him, Brother James Henry, I think I spoke on it before. I'm just looking at his track record of any programs and things he's put in place. You're voting for the head coach, right? So the head coach, you're looking at their experience in winning, their successes, their things that they've been able to accomplish. James was never the president of a branch. He was never the business agent. He never had to strategize and work with people and put things in place. As the vice president, what can you point to? What successes, where are the grievance starters that you developed? How have you helped out with the training? How, where have you moved us forward in your position as the vice president? I don't see it to the extent that we want to make you the president of the union. But I definitely am more open to that than the other two. I'll tell you that for sure.
How long did you know that Renfro had a drinking problem? Why wasn't this addressed earlier?
So when you say problem, I didn't know that he was an alcoholic. And I don't know, medically what the distinction between somebody who's an alcoholic or somebody who likes to drink or, whatever. To me, when alcohol takes over and you're not able to function in the way you want to function, but you can't control that, that's an alcoholic. Because I keep drinking and I can't stop myself, I'm doing these things that are harmful or that, I shouldn't be doing. So I've seen him drunk, right? I never saw him in the bushes before, but, I've been around him socially and different things, and I've seen him drunk before, but I never thought he was an alcoholic, no. And, one of the problems with the structure of the union is that there are people that are on staff that work for the people that they're on staff of. So if they're on President Renfro's staff or Executive Vice President's staff, they work for the man. So do you think they're going to be honest and open and tell us everything that's going on? They're not, because they work for that person. They don't work for the members, right? All of us that are elected representatives, we work for the members of the union directly. We're elected by the members of the union. People that are appointed to their positions are not in that situation. So there was not enough oversight over the daily activities of Brian Renfro when he was the executive vice president for us to know that he had this very bad problem. Now, he knew he had the problem, right? And that's what I don't forgive him for. But he never told me he was an alcoholic. I remember in the early part of 2023, I heard about, I think you probably told me, a couple other people, what he did in Region 8, right? Not just the stuff with Susie Miller, but, showing up late to the rap session, showing up intoxicated, being at the bar all night. And I remember going to NALC headquarters at the time for a meeting or whatever, and I'm walking around asking people, hey, you think this guy might be an alcoholic? You think he might have a problem here? What are we dealing with, right? And the answer was, I don't know. And either they didn't know legitimately, or they were covering it up and hiding it from us. I don't know. I really don't know the answers to that. But it's a tough thing, man. People and alcoholics are by nature not honest, right? Because they're trying to hide their alcoholism. We were in some meetings in January 2023 in Marietta, Georgia, and we're sitting around this not a campfire, a gas thing where it's like heat or whatever. Campfire for when you're not outdoors with the gas thing.
Gas
I was like,
house.
what do they call that damn thing? A gas campfire. Anyway, we're sitting out there, and everyone is having a little drink or just talking or whatever, and I'm standing next to President Renfro, and he asked me, did I want something to drink? And I said, man, I think it was a dry January for me. I say I'm trying to cut back, kind of thing, and I was either drinking water or soda or whatever, pop. We say pop in Chicago. Anyway, and I asked him, I said, are you drinking? And he said, nah, I've been trying to cut back too, and that was a lie. But I didn't know that, I didn't go, we came to find out later, he reported what appeared to be drunk to one of our meetings, the following day. And at that time, you're like, holy shit, so he wasn't drinking water last night. But you just don't know, You only know what you know. And I understand the sentiment of the members is like, how come you guys didn't know that he had this problem? And how come you didn't do something about it? And, I'll be honest, the first time that I realized there was a very significant problem was, I knew I had certain philosophical and ideological differences with President Renfro's leadership style versus my own or some other people, right? I knew that. But the personal stuff or, the alcoholism, I really wasn't aware of. But when we got together to run a campaign in 2022, he had the responsibility of making sure that the printer got the mailing that went out to all the members. And he wasn't able to get the mailing to the printer in time, which is crazy. I mean, when you're running a national campaign, that's like the most basic thing. Make sure the mailing gets to the printer. And he couldn't do that. And then we had a meeting about it afterwards, and he was kind of dodging us a little bit and, started kind of lying about it and blaming the printer. And that's when I really started thinking, holy shit, we got a problem here. But nominations had happened already. Constitutionally, you have nominations and then you have an election. It was you couldn't go back and do the nominations again. So we were at that point already stuck with him, unfortunately.
Deep dish or thin crust?
We eat thin crust in Chicago. Deep dish is for the tourists. But once a year, when you guys come into town, we have the deep dish.
All right.
It's still good, you know.
Postal management has embarked on a free-for-all rampage against letter carriers all over the United States, literally laughing at the NALC. Tenacious contract enforcement and countless thousands of grievances filed by local NALC branches has done nothing to stem or even slow this assault. The current administration is clearly complicit by their silence and even acquiescence to the rampant USPS abuse of letter carriers, both in the office and on the street. Scanner tracking is just an inconvenience. What is the first thing that you would do as NALC president to effectively address this?
Well, I don't know that management is laughing at us. And the reason I say that is because you got some beasts out there. You got some union stewards, branch presidents, whatever. Anyone up and down the chain that's a representative for the union that are beasts. And they're making them pay. You know, we got a situation in a small town in Illinois. There's 3 to 5 carriers in there. I think there's like 3 routes and up to 5 carriers that work there. Anyway, because of the history and because of that local branch has been so effective. And I'll shout out branch 407 here. The president is Brian Johnson. One of the guys named Elliot Simmons worked a lot on these grievances. But anyway, I wouldn't draw the conclusion that they're laughing at the NALC representatives in branch 407. It's just an example, right? Because the representatives of branch 407 have been raking them, they just, labor relations called me because apparently there's these automatic remedies built into these grievances, and they're set to pay out hundreds of thousands of dollars to each one of those carriers. And they said to me, Mike, do you think that's fair that these carriers are getting all that money? I said, obviously it is. Obviously it's fair and then some, because you're not stopping the behavior, of your managers that are causing you to have to pay out all this money. So I wouldn't start with the premise that, they're laughing at us. I still think there's a lot of fear of what we can do as a union, and they should be scared of us because we have some good people, a lot of good people, passionate people, smart people, people that know how to get it. What we need is better coordination and strategy as a union on how we're going to address particular issues. That's my opinion.
Stationary events. How are you going to attack this onslaught with these scanners? And that's what they're talking about, this inconvenience. Our president has left us out to dry as far as the scanners. You've been doing this a long time. One of the biggest things we dealt with back with MSP was management not being able to track us with these scanners.
Or hold us accountable for it.
Yeah, right. We fought that vigorously.
Right.
And to have this buffoon come in and completely overturn every bit of that work, and I talk about this all the time, overturn every bit of that work that we've done to keep our carriers from having to be bullied and harassed on the street with these scanners. And now you have this dipshit saying it's an inconvenience and refusing to put up any fight. What are you going to say about it when you're president?
Well, first of all, why would we negotiate against ourselves? So right now there's no street standard whatsoever. You look through the M41 where it talks about on street. There's no, it's going to take you this amount of time to do this. There's no time associated with any of the activities that we perform on the street. You look through the M39. If the supervisor feels, I think the word loitering is in there, and there's something about being efficient in there, in the M39 on the street language. But it says if they think that you're loitering or being inefficient, they're going to come out and watch you and be able to show exactly what you're doing wrong so that you can correct any deficiency. Why would we negotiate against what we already have, which works just fine and is in place so that the carrier can provide the absolute best service to the American public that is within their ability and their capability as a professional letter carrier and a craftsman, a craftswoman out there on the street. So I don't know if we would need to file if when there's directives that are put out by national USPS, we should file a national grievance, right? To nip that in the bud. If it's a directive that's coming from a local manager or local postmaster, then we need to make sure that we're getting the training and making sure our people know how to effectively deal with those things in the grievance procedure. And then the last thing is we need a better contract. We need a contract that makes it clear what the rules are and what the rules of engagement are so that our people can not be harassed daily about everything that we do.
The AVP, would that be a national level grievance? An initiative or a directive from the AVP?
Yeah, that thing that came out in that postal update or whatever you're talking about? Yeah, we should have filed a national grievance on that.
Exactly.
Yep.
That should have been done immediately when that AVP came out. And he's one of the ones that's doing this 6-day count training.
Is that Colin
Dr.
something?
Colin.
Yeah.
He's down there and going to be down there in Dallas doing this training for this 6-day count. He's one of the guest speakers.
What is his title? He's not an AVP. He's something. But
something different.
He's like a USPS delivery manager or whatever.
Operations or something like that. But he used to be the AVP. But he comes out and he says, here's these metrics. Our office time, stationary events. And we don't do shit. We don't do anything.
Right.
And look at how much that's spread like wildfire right now across this country. This hour office time and stationary events. Nobody is getting involved with that nationally.
Authorized breaks.
I take that back. Our president did get involved with that nationally because he said that they can watch us as an inconvenience. So that son of a bitch is out of it. But, to me, I agree.
How about authorized breaks? So you get this messaging that comes through the MDD, and it violates the Postal Service's own safety program.
Yeah.
The program says if you're overheated or whatever, you take the appropriate breaks. It never says nothing about an authorized break, but then they put out this messaging either implying or stating that you can only take a break at an authorized time, not when you're feeling overheated or feeling the signs of heat stress. And we don't do anything about that. We don't ask them, let's put in a national request for information. Who is sending out this message? Where does it come from?
Yeah.
And we have an interpretive issue of whether or not this is in the interest of the carrier's safety and if it complies with the terms of the heat and illness protection program.
Well, I told you back when I got on the National Safety Committee, that's how I got on there, is because that message came out back then. And this was 2014, something like that.
10 years ago.
Yeah. It came out then.
And they still haven't stopped.
No, and I sent that email all across because I was on the Tennessee district. I was the co-chair for that.
I'll tell you, that's the most frustrating thing for a letter carrier is when you have issues like that that have been going on for 10 years, and you say, how come we haven't been able to stop that thing? Yeah. I'm paying my damn dues every 2 weeks,
Yeah, so I sent an email out all across the eastern area, and I said, who's the dumbass that is sending this out? Somebody needs a foot in their ass. And Pete was my business agent. He messed with me. Said, "You can't say that. You threatened the entire eastern area." I said, "No, I didn't." I said, "They need a foot in their ass." I said, "I didn't say I was going to put my foot in their ass." I said, because they're sending out these unsafe messages. How deadly is that? And we have nothing from national on those things. Anyway, I need to stop.
Or not.
This is about you. Okay, where are we at?
I don't know.
Are you willing to make the carriers the #1 paid delivery company again? Do you feel the carriers deserve to get top dollar for what we do on a daily basis?
Well, what we deserve is everything, right? What we can get is what we're able to accomplish. Do I think we'll be able to be the top paid delivery service, meaning we would get paid more than the UPS drivers? It's going to be a big fight on that one. It's going to take us a while. But I do think we have language in the law when it talks about the comparability, and career employment, what that means to give us, to give us some advantage when we go into negotiate or go into arbitration on that issue.
Right.
But here's the problem, man. No matter what we're paid, we're not going to be paid enough, right?
I agree.
But at least we gotta move it in a direction that kind of makes some sense. Right now, we're severely underpaid.
The rest of the federal government understands that certain areas cost more than others to live and work in. Just saying move to a less expensive area doesn't advance the conversation. The post office is mandated to deliver every address, so carriers must live in or near these areas. What is your position on locality pay for letter carriers?
All right, so this is one of them hot issues, and people have different opinions. So I'll say this: when we agreed to the application of the all-career model, I think that was a mistake. And the reason why I think it was a mistake is now you have certain installations that are hiring and paying, more money, and other installations that are hiring people as the all-career model, they're hiring them as PTFs, better pay, better benefits, and the other installations are hiring CCA. So effectively, when we agreed to that, we're agreeing to a pay disparity depending on where you work at. Now, I'm not for or against I forget how they worded it, but different pay for different geographic areas. And the reason why is because if you're the president of the union, you negotiate a contract that the members of the union want you to negotiate. And the members of our union, up until now, we got a convention in 2024 in Boston, the members up until now have stated clearly over the years that a letter carrier is a letter carrier is a letter carrier. We don't negotiate different pay based on where you live or where you work. We negotiate city letter carrier pay. Now, because the pay is so bad now, the issue has become a lot worse, right? We were always able to negotiate decent enough pay where you might not be living large in certain areas, but at least you can live decently in certain areas. Now with the low pay, you're living in poverty in certain areas of the country that have a high cost of living. So the main, to me, we'll see what the delegates want to do, right? If the delegates say we want the NALC to negotiate locality pay, then if I'm the president, that's exactly what I'm going to do. If they say we don't want to negotiate locality pay because we want to negotiate a high enough wage so that no matter where you live, you can live decently and be in the middle class, then that's the direction that we'll take. So I go either way on that. I did see one resolution that was interesting to me, and that was, it seemed to imply, and like I say, we'll look at all these resolutions in Boston. Hopefully we'll be taking the time to actually debate these things. Don't call for the question right away, people. let's take some time to think about these and talk about them and get different viewpoints on them. But there was one resolution that talks about the T-COLA. So you have the federal government requires, through the law, them to pay, but I guess the Postal Service makes the payment. So it's still kind of like locality pay, but it requires people that are working in Alaska or Hawaii to get paid more money. So the idea was that you could negotiate into the law a requirement that they pay more money, not just in Alaska and Hawaii, but also in Boston and New York and California and whatever. So and Chicago. Don't forget about us. We want that money too.
You're gonna fight for Chicago, get that money.
Well, yeah, of course. You don't forget about the home team.
If you win, how about doing a State of Our Union Zoom or video every month or so to engage with the city letter carriers and what's going on behind the scenes at National and what's coming down the pike? Something that Corey Walton does Sunday nights.
Absolutely. And I said at the beginning, I really appreciate the fact that my brother Corey Walton does do that. So one of the kind of things as the business agent that has always been challenging to me is communication. And I think what you're alluding to here is something that I'm just now starting to try to do. We created this day in the life with me, where I'm gonna do these videos, post them onto the NALC Region 3 YouTube page, where it's kind of like, here's what I'm up to today. Just to give the members, the idea of what we're doing, why, kind of let them see behind the curtain a little bit. So obviously we'll see how successful they are, and what works and what doesn't work. And then if I'm the president, I can continue to do the same thing. I like that idea.
Yeah, and I know that they're, I don't know if the national podcast is still going on.
Oh,
the current,
no episodes.
The current occupant. The current resident.
You are the current resident.
Yeah.
Now, President Renfro kept telling us how impatient he was to go to arbitration, and then I guess there's only so often you can say that same lie, and so he stopped doing the podcast.
And and anybody who wants to do a podcast, I'm for them.
Yeah.
If you're trying to educate, and I think that one of the issues with his, and again, I don't want to talk about anybody's podcast. One of the issues with his is he has no experience with us on the floor. I think that some, people relate to me because I'm a city letter carrier. I've been there for 30 years, or 32 now. And I deal with this same shit. I listen to people deal with the same shit. And so I'm able to talk about it to people. He just doesn't relate to us as city letter carriers. Dude's smart as hell.
It came across a little bit to me as a politician.
Yeah.
Versus a letter carrier talking to their fellow letter carriers.
Yeah, because to me, if you've not done any time on this floor, you have nothing to talk about really as far as experiences. You have no arbitrations. I can talk about arbitrations. I can talk about issues that's still going on the workroom floor. When you don't have any time on this floor, it's very hard to relate to just me as a city letter carrier. So I think I have no idea why I was talking about that. But that was...
Well, you don't miss a shot. You don't miss a chance to take a shot at Brother Renfro. I know that.
That's why you're here,
Hey, it's your microphone.
All right. If you were currently president, what would you be asking for top pay along with step A pay? Also, would you ever be interested in a 4-day work week, more annual leave? Why or why not?
Well, all of that stuff is already resolutions that have passed, in previous conventions. So all of that stuff is already bargaining goals of the NALC. What we can accomplish, that's gonna depend on what kind of leverage we can bear. Some of the ideas out there about being more public with our contract demands, I think would be helpful. Putting pressure on Congress, I think would be helpful, and also showing where the post office is wasting a lot of money, I think would be helpful.
4-day work week.
4-day work week, I think that's a resolution that has passed. So if it's a resolution, then I'd be for it. I really don't have an opinion on it, to be honest with you. But if it's a resolution of the union, then I'm for it, right?
All right. Now this person, why didn't you stick with the CLC? You've already answered that. Now here's a long one, and I might break this one up for you. And that's 328. You tell me what you want to do. Because I know you got to catch a flight.
If I'm going to try to catch that flight, might be about that time. But go ahead, ask the question.
All right. We can make this the last one. It's 2 hours and 30 minutes right now, and we can do 2 or 3 more Zooms if you want, unless you come down. But anyway. And this dude's restricting you to 2 or 3 sentences. He said 2 or 3 sentences, he must know you.
Great job. Great question already.
Tell us your mission statement and vision for the NALC.
In 2 or 3 sentences?
Yep.
That the union will be a fraternal organization, that you have absolute confidence in all of your elected representatives, that they're representing your interests, and they're fighting like hell for you every day.
All right. What is your take on the current PMG and his Delivering for America plan? Does this plan, as you know it, promote the longevity and overall welfare of the USPS? If no, what steps will we take to address the ongoing service degradation and negative impacts to city letter carriers? Will you engage in a concerted and public effort with other craft unions to address these issues?
Yeah, so, you can look it up. We held a protest. DeJoy came to speak in Downers Grove, Illinois. We held a protest outside, got a lot of the local politicians involved. The Illinois State Association of Letter Carriers led that thing. And basically, we've got to be with everybody else in saying that any deterioration of the service standards is a non-starter. If you're making the service worse in any way, that's not something we can support. And we've kind of given DeJoy a free pass here in assuming that he has the best interests of the Postal Service and service to the American public at heart. And I think that's unwarranted. That type of pass that we've given him is unwarranted, because I think he's shown that he does not have the interests of good service at heart when he makes certain decisions as a Postmaster General. So I wouldn't make a blanket statement, but we are definitely against the deterioration of the service standards, and we're definitely against anything that harms the mail in any way.
Workroom floor issues. As the MBA, what issues have you seen, and what steps have you taken to address those issues? Where have you found success and failure? On a national scale, what would you expect to see that has been absent so far, and will you engage in a campaign to address these issues?
Well, yeah, I thought that's what I was doing. So this might be a little lengthy. I put some things in the platform if you go back and look at them, but there's been a lot of things, and we're gonna add some stuff to the website with the like arbitration awards and some background on how we got there. But there's been a few issues that we've had success with in Region 3 since I've been the business agent, and how we're able to address it in terms of, things like how we address emergency placement, contract compliance, dealing with them not paying COP, Postal Service not providing information for grievance files, whatever. There's a few of them where we've been successful and we've gotten remedies that have been applicable and kind of have really moved the needle in favor of the letter carrier. So obviously those are things that we would be able to carry forward. We'd be able to carry those things forward whether I'm the president or not. But right now there's really no coordination between all the regions. I mean, there's probably other regions that are accomplishing certain things. I'm not even aware of it because there really is no coordination between what everyone is doing individually in their region. So I think that's something that we would have to change, and we would have to improve upon and make sure that where we have successes, that we're able to implement those successes to the benefit of all the letter carriers all over the country, not just the ones that happen to be in a particular region.
All right, training advocacy work. In Region 3, you're pushing for training and representation are high points that deserve recognition. Do you feel that these efforts can be scaled up on a national level? From your perspective, what are the most important factors that will determine success at such an initiative, and what are the hurdles and challenges? How do we overcome those challenges to achieve the goal?
Yeah, I'm not sure on the national list. Is kind of getting kind of deep into it, but arbitration that we do is regional arbitration, meaning that regional arbitrators are picked for a panel that will be for that particular region with their counterpart in that particular area with the Postal Service. And you have particular issues that come up. You have particular arbitrators that you deal with within there. And then you have the business agent who constitutionally sets the agenda for contract enforcement. So I'm mainly more in favor of regional training for the advocates because it's regional arbitration. But we have seen some success. Just this weekend, for example, they're finishing up the ACE training, which has been taking place in Marietta, Georgia. And you're getting kind of, the way I look at it is that if you're a baseball player, right, you go to a hitting camp. And that's what I see the ACE training as. We're sending our advocates to Marietta, Georgia. They're learning things about hitting. They're learning things about being advocates. But still, you have to have in your region, you have to have practice as a team, right? You still got to get together. What are the particular issues we're dealing with? How do we address them? What are these arbitrators? We just had a 2-day meeting in Moline, Illinois with all of our advocates and our DRT reps so that we can get together, strategize, talk about what's working, what's not working, talk about the different arbitrators, how they view things, how they handle things, things we've been successful with them, things that have not worked with them, that kind of thing. So that's that practice that's got to take place within each region based on the way we have regional arbitration set up right now.
All right. What skills, abilities separate you from the other candidates?
That's a tough question, and I'm not like a big self-promoter, but as a candidate, what I think I've done well in my region is work with everybody. So the communication is there, people feel part of it, the participation is there. We've developed a ton of leadership in the region. We've developed good training in the region. Our people are responsive, they're on top of issues. And I think what the skill that I mainly have is the ability to work with people, to strategize, to get different points of view, and to move us forward as a group. I like to think that I have a collaborative approach to leadership that sometimes other people don't have for whatever reason.
All right, what do you want to do?
Yeah, we got to go.
All right. So we're going to end it right there. We're about 20 questions into 111. So,
well, some of them are repeats.
Hey, and I've not even got to Discord and Reddit, and so we'll get to those.
We'll be doing podcasts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
until
Thursday.
2026. Mike, I appreciate you coming down and answering these questions. If you can't come next time, we'll do it Zoom, and I'm going to try to make them about 2.5, 3 hours. That way my pod serve won't do any. It has a hard time uploading anything longer than that. We're right at 2 hours and 40 minutes right here. But I appreciate you coming down and answering these questions. That's going to be part 1. we'll get back together as far as when you want to start answering the rest of these questions. But I appreciate you as always, my brother. We will have our differences going forward, but I think you're a hell of a business agent. I think your training is second to none. I've said that from way back when. You were one of the very first individuals to reach out about the podcast way back when, because you took exception to my 16.7 episode. So, but I appreciate your interest in the podcast, but I appreciate your passion for city letter carriers. It is what it is as far as this election, my brother. But we'll get off of here, and then we will pick this back up at a later date. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Right?
Right,
I had a blast, man. To be continued.
Brother. That's right. All right, y'all. That's all for this episode. Y'all have a fantastic rest of the week. I love each and every one of you, and I promise you we're going to get this ship righted. I promise you that. Do not despair. It's going to all work out. It's going to be okay, and I give you my word on that. Next week, I'm going to have 2 individuals from the Army Corps of Engineers. That should be interesting to get a perspective from outside this group, all right? And all of that is because of y'all. When I talk about a ground roots uprising, when I talk about get up, stand up, and let your voices be heard, we've been talking about that forever. Y'all have done that, and other unions are taking notice, like the rural carriers last week. Teamsters has contacted UPS. All of these other unions are standing up and taking notice as far as what y'all are doing. And that's standing up not only against postal management, who's our biggest enemy, but also our union, who is incompetent right now at best, and the lack of leadership we have from the top 2 that have been run over by this same postal management that we're trying to defeat. People are starting to stand up and take notice about y'all, and that's an amazing thing to say. And next week are going to be 2 individuals that are going to talk about that, Army Corps of Engineers. So y'all should applaud yourselves, because y'all are showing how union, a craft, should be handling these situations as far as we're not happy and we're not going to take it any longer. All right? So y'all have a fantastic rest of the week, and I'll see y'all next Sunday. All right?